Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where a wild Karen is demanding OP's Taylor Swift tickets. Am I the jerk for selling my Taylor Swift tickets instead of giving them to my sister-in-law? I'm a 31-year-old woman living in California. About a year ago, I got 2 tickets to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour for this December in Vancouver, Canada. My sister-in-law, who's 29, has never been a huge Taylor Swift fan. She was even offered a chance to go to the Eras Tour last year, but said no because she doesn't like her music that much. But I asked if she wanted to go with me, and she said yes. Fast forward a couple of months, and I'm now expecting a baby. The concert is on December 6th, and my due date is December 7th. At first, I was adamant that I was still going to try and make it to the concert, but I soon realized it just wasn't in the cards for me. I offered to let her have the tickets if she wanted to take her daughter, who is a big Taylor Swift fan, but she said she didn't want to go if I wasn't going. A couple of weeks go by, and I tell her I'm thinking about just selling the tickets, and she tells me she's still going with or without me and that her nail tech wants to go with her. This kind of put me off a little bit, because they're my tickets, not hers, to be deciding who's using them. She never even offered to pay me face value for them. Long story short, I ended up selling the tickets for $4,000 in total, which will be a perfect nest egg for when I'm on maternity leave. She has since completely stopped communicating with me. We were pretty much best friends before this. She doesn't reply to anything I send her about the baby, ultrasound pics, etc. Stopped sharing her location and is now looking to go out of town the day of my baby shower, which has been planned for months. So, am I the jerk here? So first, she won't go without you, but then she invites her nail tech? That's massively presumptuous, especially since she didn't contribute to the cost of the tickets. Wow, not the jerk. Your sister-in-law got greedy and you have a backbone, so her loss. Your tickets, your rules. Congrats on the baby and the big lump of money you got for your tickets. I'm thinking she found out that she could sell them and then didn't tell you she changed her mind about not wanting the tickets. You can almost guarantee that the nail tech was going to pay her for the other ticket. My boyfriend's ex hid a note about his cleaning habits right before they broke up that I just found. I, 28 female, and my boyfriend, who's 30, we'll call Steve, have been together for 2 years and have been living together for 8 months. I was cleaning our apartment when I found a note in the back of a cabinet. For context's sake, I'll copy it here. Dear Steve's future girlfriend, I know it's you reading this because he'd never clean back here. I'm putting this here because I'm leaving him soon and I want to warn you about him. He will not clean, he will not listen, he will make everything feel like it's your fault. It's not your fault. He's just an incompetent man. I'm leaving him. I suggest you do the same. Best wishes, Natalia. I read the note and brought it to Steve to hear his response. He immediately ripped it up and said not to listen to it, claiming she was crazy and untrustworthy. I told him that the fact he hasn't found it in the 5 years since they broke up is a red flag to me because it means he's never cleaned back there. He has been cleaning less and less since I moved in. He told me that it wasn't a problem before the note and that this is just his ex continuing to manipulate and ruin his life, and I was letting it work. We continued to argue along the same lines, and I eventually left to spend the night at a friend's place. Steve has been a great boyfriend so far. He gets along with my family, has given me gifts and flowers, and always tells me how much he loves me. He's not wrong that the cleaning hasn't really been brought up before. The note made me realize it had been happening less and less, and that we needed to have a full conversation. He texted me afterward, saying he's sorry that I felt like I had to leave, but that it's a jerk move for me to take a note over our 2-year relationship and to leave him and our pets alone. I don't know what to do or what to believe right now. I'm contemplating trying to find and reach out to Natalia. Her real name is pretty unique, so I think I could find her. Steve thinks I should come back home and let it go, that his past shouldn't affect our future. I feel like I could be the jerk because everything Steve has said about Natalia does make it sound like she was manipulative and petty throughout their relationship, but I don't know who to trust. Edit. When we moved in together 8 months ago, the cleaning was 50-50. Since then, he's been doing things less and less, and I'd say it's now like 70-30 or maybe 60-40 if he listens to me right away. It depends on the week. I have to remind him to do things like bring his plates to the sink or take out the trash, which I didn't have to do before. The dishes will pile up unless I do them, to the point he's had leftover food mold on the plates. I'm not a confrontational person, so I was just asking him to fix it when it came up. The note made me reflect on it more and try to have an actual full conversation. And I will say, I didn't feel listened to when I talked to him about it. I tried to use the note to start a conversation about cleaning, but he got so stuck on the fact that I was listening to his ex instead of him that he wouldn't listen to what I think are valid concerns. He thinks I'm letting the note create confirmation bias, so no matter what he says, I'll think he's in the wrong. Also, I didn't leave him permanently. This all happened yesterday, and I only spent one night at a friend's because I didn't feel like our conversation was going anywhere last night, and he wouldn't let me sleep until I let it go. I'm going back today and wanted to get advice and feedback before I do. Update. I followed your advice from my last post, and I tried to have a calm discussion with Steve. When I apologized for confronting him with the note, he seemed to take that as an admission of guilt and refused to listen to anything else. I had come up with a list of specific instances of not cleaning, like many of you suggested, and he said I was using lists just like his manipulative ex did. So yeah, the crazy ex thing you all said was a red flag was definitely true. When I realized the conversation wasn't going anywhere, he even tried to block me from leaving. That's when I knew it was done, and I left immediately. 2 years down the drain, but I'm glad I had the wake-up call before it was too late. I'll let him cool off and then ask my brother to come with me to grab my things while he's not there. He has a strict work schedule, so I think it'll work out. I'm planning on leaving a note there, but probably a little longer with the advice not to show it to him. I'm leaving it in the exact same place, so if he doesn't learn his lesson about cleaning, it'll come back to haunt him. All he has to do is clean. The biggest surprise out of all of this is that I didn't reach out to Natalia. She reached out to me. Apparently, he borrowed his friend's phone to call her, screaming that she's still ruining his life. The fact that she blocked him and he still had her number memorized just further confirms that he was the crazy ex, not her. Natalia found me on social media and wanted to make sure I was okay, and was especially concerned that he had gaslight me like he tried to do with her. I thanked her for leaving me the note and saving me time. We scheduled coffee for Thursday afternoon. Final update. First, I wanted to respond to the comments saying I broke up a 2-year relationship over a note and chores. No, I broke up a 2-year relationship because when I tried to come with solutions to an unequal situation, his response was to yell and try to convince me that there was no problem except for me. The final straw was when he tried to stop me from leaving when we were arguing. That's not okay, and no one should stay with someone who responds to conflict like that. I wound up texting the post to Natalia last night, and she thought it was great. She, like some of you, asked me about the pets. For context, one of the things Steve and I connected on was our love for little creatures. It's why I thought he was such a great guy, because if he could take such intricate care of his lizard, I thought he could do the same with me. But I was wrong. He has one lizard he bought before me, and then we bought 2 frogs together. I have a snake I brought with me when I moved in. I was planning on waiting until he cooled down to go grab my things and the frogs and snake, thinking he would never do anything to them, but Natalia changed my mind. She said he could get destructive when he's mad and was concerned about the safety of my pets. I immediately knew that I couldn't wait until later this week, and I reached out for a meeting with the landlord for early this morning. I wound up FaceTiming with Natalia last night, and we had a long discussion. Natalia is a lawyer and told me that in our state, landlords are required to let me out of the lease I signed in these kinds of cases. She also told me that his yelling and gaslighting and refusing to let me leave were not right. Anyway, this morning, Natalia volunteered to come talk to the landlord with me, alongside with my brother. As soon as he heard the word lawyer, he was on top of it and said I could break the lease, but would still have to pay for all of August, even though I'm leaving 3 days early. I feel like that was fair. He also messaged Steve to say the apartment needed to be empty for emergency maintenance all day today so I could pack my things. Steve messaged back that he was at work all day and wouldn't be home until 6. When I got into the apartment, it was a mess. He had broken the dishes I brought with me, leaving the pieces on the ground. My clothes were all scattered around the room. It was just heartbreaking. He left his lizard alone, but opened the tank doors for our frogs and my snake. Luckily, the frogs were still chilling in their enclosure, but my snake had gotten loose. This made me the most mad, as she could have been hurt. I feel so fortunate that she was just hiding in the closet corner, and I was able to pack her up safely in her enclosure again. All of my things are now packed, and I'm writing this as my brother drives me back to my friend's house right now. Natalia told me that she actually left 3 notes, one in the cabinet, one on the underside of the vacuum, and one on the crumb catcher of the toaster. While we were there, we checked to see if the notes were still there. The one on the vacuum was, but it looks like Steve did clean out the crumb catcher at least once in the past 5 years. He never told me he had already found a note in our conversations, so it caught me by surprise. Natalia and I left the vacuum note as is and replaced the cabinet one. I wasn't comfortable leaving my name on a new note, so my addition was a handout on healthy versus unhealthy relationships. I hope if you learn anything from my experience, it's that mistreating people doesn't start right away. First, there's love bombing, gifts, and pretty words, and then slowly they test how much you'll put up with. You should never have to put up with anything, especially moldy plates. Am I the jerk for refusing to make my son go on a camping trip? I share custody of a moody, emotional, cranky 11-year-old son with his mom. I'm very mindful and respectful that he's hitting puberty, and I give him space and boundaries. One minute he will give you the death stare for being in the same room, and the next minute he'll want a play fight because he knows I'm going to hug him. Right now, Ethan is going through a phase where he doesn't want any adult relatives posting any pictures or videos of him on their social media accounts. The exceptions are if you're between the ages of 14 to 25 and doing something fun or something that makes him look cool. His mom and stepdad love posting pictures of their family all the time. Ethan told them not to post pictures of him. His stepdad told him that not posting family pictures without him is like letting him skip showering or brushing his teeth. It's sort of required. My son complained to me, and I said I'm not getting involved with how they run their home. To me, it's not a hill worth dying on. Ethan let them know how he felt. I had Ethan all week, and he goes back to his mom's on Saturday. He refuses to go back because he doesn't want to go on the family Labor Day camping trip where he'll be photographed. I asked my son if this was really worth fighting over, and he believes it is. I spoke to his mom, and she thought it was ridiculous. I said I agree, but this is just some weird tween boy power trip thing, so just promise me not to take his picture. She refused. Now Ethan refuses to go on the trip. Last night, his stepdad and maternal uncle called him separately. Both calls resulted in Ethan crying. They basically told him that he's going. That upset me. I called them both up and said my custody issues with his mom are none of their business. I agree it's stupid and a compromise could have been met. Now that they've inserted themselves into the matter, I have no choice but to let him stay here if he wants. His mom is mad at me. I told her to just drop it and that she can take him for a few days when she gets back. The situation has gotten too dramatic. It's not like he doesn't want to go back because he has to clean his room. He has to know that his stepdad and uncle are not calling the shots. She's furious at me and says I'm encouraging bad behavior by letting him stay here. Ironically, I'm way more strict than she is. Not the jerk. This is important to your son and it's upsetting to him. It's good that you're sticking up for him, but custody-wise, if his mother is supposed to have him that weekend, there's not a lot you can do. You're the jerk. Wow, I see why she divorced you and found a real man. We are all bratty tweens at some point in our life, but your enabling him to be a brat is going to prevent him from learning to face the challenges ahead in his life. It's only okay if I'm posted in pics with young adults where I look cool is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I kept a diary to track my wife's affection towards me, and it's as bad as I tell her it is. I, 34 male, and my wife, who's 43, have been together for 16 years and married for 7. We have a 4-year-old daughter together. After the first few years, where my wife was very kind, present, loving, and affectionate, things have changed a lot. I rarely receive kisses from her, let alone hugs or kind words. She doesn't ask how I'm doing in the morning, let alone say good night or good morning. I'm tired of this. I've told her in every possible way that, as a man, I need these expressions of love to feel loved. Her excuse is that she's too stressed because of our kid, but these things were happening even before our daughter was born, or that everything depends on my behavior towards her. Every time, it always depends only on me. When we argue about this, she says I'm exaggerating. Tired of arguing about this for a year, I have recorded in a diary all her expressions of love over the past month. I know it may seem exaggerated, but believe me, I'm exhausted and I don't know how else to show her the lack of love I feel from her. I'm fed up. I don't feel loved as I would like, and I have lived like this for many years, and now I can't take it anymore. Please don't get mad at me. Everyone needs their own time to understand certain things, and I realized this over the past year. I'm a romantic, passionate, and attentive man. Normally, I can give 5 to 6 hugs a day, kisses, compliments, surprises, and I can talk about anything and discuss things in different ways. However, being treated like this makes me shut down and withdraw because of the lack of reciprocity. I'm seriously thinking of divorcing because I don't feel heard or understood. I don't see a person who understands and takes action to change the situation. What is the breakdown of the chores or household work? OP. I'm doing 50-50, working, watching the kid, taking out the trash, doing laundry, blah blah blah. The fact is that even before the kid, she behaved like that. I don't want my wife to be my mommy, and I'm fully capable of living alone and doing everything, because I already have before. Everything depends on your behavior towards her? Can you elaborate on this more? OP. Basically, we're running in this circle until some months ago. I don't receive what I ask, affection, and I'm treated poorly. So after a long time of patiently waiting for change, I stonewall or get offended. We have a fight about this. She says she has had enough of the stonewalling and me being offended because it hurts her. We end the fight with me being the one that swallows it and tries to let it go. I try to tell her what's causing this and to take action. Time passes and we're again back to the start. Some months ago, I read about stonewalling and how bad it is, so I ended it. But still, it's really hard for me to get through this lack of affection. The problem is that I've also been treated very badly during these fights, yelled at, called names, divorce threatened by her side. I'm hurt on so many levels. What are you doing to love her back? I feel like the diary can backfire because it focuses your emotions on her actions rather than on what you can control. OP, the diary is about facts, not my emotions. If I receive no hugs for 5 days in a row, it's no hugs for 5 days in a row. I tell her I love her. I tell her how beautiful she is. I joke with her. I buy her preferred premium soda when I do groceries. I ask her how she feels when she's ill, and I take care of her. But do I feel reciprocated? No. Update. I've spent a lot of time reading online, watching reels, and watching YouTube videos to better understand my situation. Thanks to one of these, I discovered the issue of avoidant attachment style. I was stunned by how closely my wife fit the description, and I set out to thoroughly study the case. I also identified other things I should do in my relationship: set clear boundaries, demand that my requests are understood, respected, and fulfilled, stand firm in my position, and if necessary, make it clear that I'm willing to leave. I showed the Excel sheet to my wife the next day. Her first response was, "But yesterday we cuddled." I told her, "Look at the facts over the past month. There are things you never do, and the few things you do are a result of my complaints or arguments. They're not debatable. I'm sorry." Then I told her what I discovered and how she fits into the case. I read her the main characteristics of these people and the types of issues that they've gone through in their past. I explained to her, knowing her personal family history, that this was mainly thanks to what her family life was like growing up. My wife was stunned and listened, then asked me, "So, what should I do to solve this?" My answer was, "I don't know, because I really don't know. The thing I do know, and what I told her, is that these problems were generated from her childhood and need to be addressed now. I'm now informing myself about the options available to solve or at least alleviate these issues. Sadly, we have a difficult schedule, so a therapist is for now off the table." During the day, I cried a lot because finally, after 16 years, I understood why we had these problems. A strong sadness came over me because I recalled all the situations where I was treated badly, with indifference, and did not receive the affection I wanted. I also remembered all the lies and manipulations used over time to cover up her shortcomings. I think the first step is to focus on myself and solve my own problems since I developed an anxious attachment style. I'll probably use an online course and books to do this since I have very little time between my daughter and work. If it helps, I'll propose it to my wife, who says, "I understand, don't worry, now I know what I need to give you without courses or anything." But I have serious doubts about this statement and will continue to track what happens in my diary to have objective data. I've already told her that if, unfortunately, the situation doesn't resolve, I will proceed with divorce. And when I do, if forced, I won't go back. That will be the end. Update. So, as expected, my wife lasted less than 3 days. Actually just one, in terms of giving kisses, hugs, and cuddling. But it doesn't matter. I found all the things I needed to fix in me, so I'm starting the journey alone in order to grow and be able, without hesitation, to proceed with a divorce and not go back to her. I'm also seeing a lawyer to have everything checked before I proceed in the future. The interesting thing is that I listed all my insecurities and issues, things that I want to work on and fix in myself. I asked out of curiosity what my wife thinks are the top 3 things that should be fixed, expecting them to be at least 10 items, but she just told me that defensiveness and stonewalling are the only 2 things and that without them, I would be a perfect husband. I was stunned and confused the whole day. I asked her if removing these 2 things would result in her loving me more, but she told me no because she already loves me the way I am, and this is just my cross to bear. So it seems she's happy with the marriage while I'm not. I want more from a relationship, at least the basic caring of a wife. I don't think I'll give you any other updates because I'll be focused on improving things in myself, but thank you again for your support. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law that her side hustle makes her a bad person? My brother, 33 male, and his wife, who's 30, have 2 sons who are 3 and 1. My wife and I have a 5-year-old son, so over the years, we've given them quite a few items that we no longer used or needed. Crib, clothes, toys, various baby items, etc. Most of these things were just taking up space in our house, and we knew that they would put them to use, so we had no problem giving them away. We visited them a couple of weeks ago for their 3-year-old's birthday party. During the party, my sister-in-law mentioned that she has been selling off a bunch of baby stuff as a side hustle. Both she and my brother are the youngest of their families, and she said they get so many hand-me-downs from their siblings that they couldn't keep track of all of them. Her solution was to start selling these gifts online to make a few extra bucks. She was basically bragging about it. I told her that it's a pretty crappy thing to do, considering that these items were given to them as gifts that they willingly accepted and were expected to use. I asked her if they had sold some of the things we have given them, and she laughed and said that she was sure she did because we've given them a lot of stuff. I told her that if I had known she was going to sell those items off, I would have given them away to someone else or donated them to a local nonprofit that helps young mothers in need. She got defensive and told me that it's not like she's making a lot of money off these things, just a few bucks here and there. I told her that the people buying those items are probably the same people who would benefit from getting them for free and that she's taking advantage of them. She went off about how hard things are with the economy right now and how they need all the help they can get financially. Mind you, both she and my brother have college degrees and work full-time. I know raising kids is expensive, but they aren't in dire straits. I told her that she probably shouldn't expect us to give anything else in the future, and I would probably suggest to my other siblings that they all refrain from doing so as well and look into other options for donating things. She got defensive again and told me that she doesn't feel like she's doing anything wrong. I told her she's entitled to feel that way, but my opinion of her as a person is now lesser because of this. She said that selling things they don't use to make a few bucks doesn't make her a bad person, and I told her that considering they were given these things for free, it kind of does. By this point, other people had noticed our conversation, and my brother stepped in to end the discussion before things got too heated. He told me I should mind my own business, and that if I don't want to give them anything else in the future, that's my choice. But he also said that I took this too far by calling his wife a bad person for selling things that they don't use. Knowing that you and your siblings were all giving her hand-me-downs, you had to think that maybe they were being given more than they needed. Just as these things were taking up space in your house, they're now taking up space in theirs. After you give them all away, you lose the right to say what's done with them. Could she have donated what she didn't want or need anymore? Sure, but she decided to sell them. And I'm going to assume she's selling them as used, so not for a huge amount of money. You could have done either of these things too, but you and your siblings just assumed that they would need all of your unneeded stuff. Knowing that it's so many of you who want to offload onto her, and that you could realistically only want or need so much of it, it would have made so much more sense to show her what you were looking to get rid of, or ask her what she needed, and then tell her to pick what she wants, and that you'll deal with the rest. With the rest, you could have found someone else who needed things to offer them to, donated to an organization or a place of worship, or sold them yourselves. It would have been your choice. But you didn't. You all gave her more things than she could actually use, and it was all just taking up space in their home. Selling it is what she decided to do with it. You're the jerk for criticizing her for it. What you'll do in the future, however, is up to you, and they seem fine with that. You're the jerk. You gave her family some stuff. At this point, the stuff was no longer yours. She can do whatever she wants with it. Sell it, burn it, whatever. You get zero say. Yes, you're perfectly entitled to no longer give her hand-me-downs. That's your choice. You're the jerk mostly because you're judging her for what she does with her family stuff. Enlisting the rest of your family to follow your lead? That's low. They get to make their own decisions. Eyes on your own work, Super Chief.
I finally kicked my Karen daughter out of the house. My daughter recently told me and my wife that she's pregnant, and apparently she's been hiding it for 3 months. The boyfriend is a scumbag who I thought she left after I gave her an ultimatum to either leave him or leave my house, to which she chose the latter, or at least I thought she did. She started sobbing and telling us how sorry she was and that it was just a big mistake. I told her the only way she can stay in our house is if she gave the baby up for adoption, because we won't allow it to ruin her life. She just kept pleading to us that she'll take care of it, but I had a very hard time believing her after I just found out she's been lying to me for months and going behind my back to see her boyfriend. My daughter refused to give her baby up, to which I decided to kick her out of my house, and now she's staying with a friend for I don't know how long. My wife has been incredibly sad and is now telling me what I did was wrong. It wasn't an easy decision for me to make, but I couldn't allow her to walk away without any consequences. At her age, I was already taking care of myself, so I don't look at it the same way others might. Is it really wrong for me to kick my adult daughter out of my house after she lied to me? I'm willing to see if I've taken things too far.
You're the jerk.
You know forbidding your daughter from seeing her boyfriend is just going to make him more desirable, right? And how is kicking her out when she's pregnant, vulnerable, and in need of stability and love going to help? Yeah, not great parenting, I would say. Edit. Getting a few responses saying, OP set his rules and his daughter made her bed. Now she has to live with the consequences. Setting rules is one thing. Kicking out your daughter when she is most desperate is going to be the jerk choice 99.9% of the time. OP is choosing his rules over supporting his daughter. Not the jerk. If she expects for you to shoulder the expense and take on childcare duties you didn't agree to, you've put her in a very difficult position, and I can see why a lot of people think you are the jerk, but I would have done the same. Although, I would have had a serious conversation first about what I am willing and unwilling to do. Set very firm rules and boundaries as to my involvement and financial help, which she has to accept if she wants to return. If she chooses to keep the baby and I'm financially able, I would help in initially setting her up outside of my home, as I have no interest in raising another baby in my 40s, but I'm not going to financially support her forever. That being said, I would not leave her with completely no options, no support, and no help. If you let her come back with her choosing to keep the baby, know that there will be responsibilities expected from you that will fall on you and your wife, considering she's only 19. Is she working? How will she support herself? Is she going to pursue getting child support from the father? Either way, it's a difficult decision to make. Best of luck to you and your daughter. Not the jerk. If you let her stay, you and your wife will be the ones raising that baby while she runs around getting into more trouble and having more kids. She'll know that she can count on mom and dad to keep providing while she keeps doing her thing. I'm disgusted by all the people here telling you you're in the wrong. The good thing is they will be in the same position in about 30 years. Then they will get to be the 41-year-old grandparents raising babies. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for kicking his daughter out or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for insisting my kids know their gifts are from me, not Santa? So I'm a mother of a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. This year, I want to only give a couple of cheap gifts as from Santa for each kid. The rest of their gifts will be clearly marked as from me, my husband, and other family and friends. My thought behind this is that it's not fair on kids whose families can't get them big presents to hear of other kids getting big things from Santa. This has caused an argument between my husband and me, and other members of the family are taking his side, stating I'm ruining the magic for my kids, and that they don't mind the kids not knowing what gifts are from them. I'm not against them believing in Santa and having that childhood wonder, but I don't agree with it being more than a few small gifts. But I also don't want to ruin their fun in Christmas. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. There's a movement of people trying to do this. I see it all over social media. Santa gifts should be a couple of small fun toys and a book, something any kid might receive. Otherwise, kids like me grow up wondering why Santa would bring the rich kids a motorized Jeep mini car, a bike, and a telescope, and would only bring me an off-brand Barbie and some rocks. Santa can still be magic, even if the kids know where most of the gifts come from. Edit. You can tell everyone who voted the other way never went to school after Christmas and had to hear about all the expensive stuff Santa brought other kids. Their privilege is showing. You are very definitely not the jerk. Not the jerk. I have a lot of feelings about the whole Santa thing, and your point is one of them. Santa originally was to bring one toy to kids and morphed into parents buying everything their kid wants from Santa. Not to mention, kids growing up in less savory home situations can seriously freak out over the idea of some fat guy breaking into their home. I think you can do the magic of Santa and the fun Santa Day without making it all about what Santa can bring you. One gift, or a few cheaper gifts, or a stuffed animal or something is perfectly acceptable. Also, they're 6 and 4 and getting gifts. They're not going to give two hoots who the gift comes from as long as they get fun presents. You're the jerk. You are basing your family's decisions on some imaginary kids at school who might get upset because Santa didn't get them what he got your kid. What could you possibly get a 4- and 6-year-old that would make their peers think that? Also, so the kids will be upset that Santa got your kids cool stuff, but if your kid just says the gifts come from you, the imaginary poor kid will not feel bad? Feel free to celebrate the holiday however you see fit, but if you want your kids to give you all the credit for your amazing gifts, then just say that and give it a rest with the concern about the imaginary kid who was in tears because your 4-year-old got a doll from Santa. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. People really love to overthink things nowadays, don't they? We won't talk to anyone except for the name on the account. This took place about 15 years ago and involved a large corporate banking entity. I forgot the name of it, but for the sake of the story, let's call it Fells Wargo. There are some important parts that come into play. 1. My spouse and I were young and dumb financially. We both had bounced a few checks on our own checking accounts. They were closed a few years prior. 2. Fells Wargo offered a way to rehab your checking account's history. They offered you the opportunity to pay them an additional $10 a month to have the right to have a checking account. They restricted the release of funds and made life difficult to even having a checking account, but if you played by their rules, you could graduate to a traditional checking account after a year. 3. I participated in the opportunity checking and graduated my account. My spouse had lived without a checking account for a few years and wanted to try again. 4. I took my spouse to Fells Wargo. We specifically explained their previous history and specifically asked for the crappy checking rebuilding account. We knew my spouse needed to start at the bottom. 5. The manager of the branch enters the basic information and declared there was no need for the rehab checking account. They qualified for the regular account. We asked again to be absolutely sure. Yes, no rehab needed. Here's some starter checks. Your ATM card will be in the mail in a week. Gladly took an initial cash deposit of $500. Fast forward a week. We get the ATM card. Call to activate it. Your account has been closed. Why? We determined you have bad checking history previously. We go round and round about how we covered this, disclosed it up front, and asked for the checking rehab account. You will have to go back and open that account if you want. We can't change the account. So they're closing the account because we needed to have the rehab checking account, the one we specifically asked for, and they refused. My spouse didn't know what to say, so we got on speakerphone. I started asking questions. So, will you pay the outstanding checks and refund the rest? No, we won't pay any checks. You'll be charged for return checks from your merchants. My spouse wrote 3 checks totaling less than $100. Very few places accepted starter checks. They have the funds in the closed account to pay them. Where's the issue? We don't do that. At this point, they became flustered. Nobody seems to ever have the funds or the audacity to demand them to pay checks written in good faith. They had no answers on how they refused the checking account we requested and would have been okay to have. They didn't think they had a responsibility to notify us the account was closed. And how dare we challenge their policy? They didn't like how I kept pointing out how there wasn't a single thing we did wrong, but they think they are not responsible for return check fees. So they decided to not talk to me any longer. They hung up. We call back, repeat. Finally, they offer this gem. We won't talk to anyone except the name on the account. Click. Their only possible choice to avoid a difficult discussion where they own their mistakes was clinging to not letting someone else ask questions with the account holder's permission. They even refused to let me tell my spouse what to ask and respond to my spouse directly. Can only talk to the name on the account? Okay. So I called back. Miraculously, in 60 seconds, I now identified as a different person. Thanks for calling Fells Wargo. May I have your name? Spouse's name. Long pause. You aren't your spouse? Me. Sure I am. Ask me anything. Name, social security, address, mother's maiden name, date of birth. Verified it all as the name on the account. Long pause. No, you aren't them. Why do you say that? Because you're a man. Wait a minute. That's why you closed my account? Because I'm a man? I'm pretty sure that's against ECOA, maybe Reg B. Please hold. A manager finally comes on. We have a little back and forth about who I identify as, but seeing how I'm not doing anything except demanding they pay checks on my spouse's account, written by my spouse, with funds in their possession, there isn't much they can fight. But they finally agree to pay the 3 checks from the funds in the account. They didn't want to, even in the end, but the name on the account demanded it. Fallout? They had to do the right thing after wasting hours fighting it. Reply. I had an issue with Webster Bank a long time ago. I checked my bank account and I was something like negative $200. I added up the overdraft fees and they were roughly $350. So I call and ask how I can be negative less than the total of the overdraft fees. They gave me some BS explanation on how they were legit overdraft fees, and I asked if they could provide physical documentation that those are legitimate charges. They said no. I said, "You'll be hearing from me," and hung up. I checked my account about a half hour later, and the fees were gone, and my account was positive $150. Am I the jerk? I upset my pregnant wife and caused her to cry. My wife is 2 months pregnant. Yesterday was my birthday. When I went into the kitchen, my wife told me that she was going to work and wouldn't be home until late. She didn't even acknowledge my birthday. I asked her if she had made any breakfast. She usually cooks breakfast for me on my birthday, but she told me to manage with cereal. I thought maybe she wants to surprise me or something and just kept quiet. My parents, siblings, and friends called me after that to wish me a happy birthday. I cooked lunch for the both of us and drove to my wife's office to spend time with her. I sat in the park opposite to her office, waiting for her to come out for lunch. I think one of her colleagues saw me waiting for her and informed her because she came down soon after and told me to go back home and not embarrass her in front of her colleagues. I handed her the lunch and asked her to at least have it instead of the cafeteria food. She took it and threw it into the trash. I was hurt and embarrassed, so I immediately left for home. I was really upset by then and no longer wanted to spend time with her. I went to a movie, ate at my favorite diner, then went to the beach for the rest of the evening. When I went home, my wife surprised me with a cake and party. My in-laws and parents were there. I ignored my wife and went back into the room. My mom got mad at me because apparently my wife was crying. I then proceeded to narrate everything that happened that day to everyone present. My mom was the only one to side with my wife because she's pregnant. My wife defended herself by saying that her colleagues were teasing her and calling me names. Now my mom is saying I'm being a baby and that my wife is pregnant and I shouldn't be making her cry. My in-laws and my dad are supporting me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Having a surprise party has nothing to do with throwing the lunch in the garbage. OP stated that wife agreed and knew he would be there. She backtracked when her coworkers made fun of her. These are two separate issues. She made you think she did nothing for your birthday so she could surprise you later. People think that makes the surprise bigger. It doesn't. It just sucks. She's the jerk for the way she handled lunch. She is the jerk for not addressing the situation with you later, apologizing for it, and having a normal conversation about it. Also, being pregnant doesn't mean you get to be a jerk and then cry when someone calls you out on it. It's not a get out of jail card for crappy behavior. Am I the jerk for dropping out of the maid of honor role last minute because of an emergency? My best friend Chloe was getting married last Saturday, and I was the maid of honor. For 1 year straight, I was the main planner for her and did the best that I could to fit the standards she had set for the wedding. I even planned an amazing bachelorette party 1 month before the wedding, and I couldn't do this without the gorgeous bridesmaids as well. 2 days before the wedding, my husband had a heart attack and was hospitalized. Doctors said his situation was severe and he was transferred to an ICU. Later, doctors told me he needs an emergency open heart surgery in the next 24 hours. His situation was very life-threatening and we could lose him any time. My best friend called me to wish me well and I thanked her. She also asked me if the surgery will happen before the wedding, and I said that it will happen the day before, but it will last for many hours. She said, "That's all right, just making sure it doesn't intervene with the wedding, that's all. It's sad we can't have Ben there," my husband, "but we'll have you, and you can eat and drink for both of you." That's when I told her I won't be able to come to the wedding, whether my husband's surgery is over or not, because I need to care for him, and I want to be next to him until we are all 100% sure he's going to be fine. She said she understands, but she reminded me that as a maid of honor, I have a duty, and it's 1 day before the wedding. I can't drop out. I said that I'm sorry about this, but I almost lost my husband, and I don't want to leave his side yet. She didn't curse me out or anything, but she was very upset and she started crying. She said she understands and wished well again. My husband's surgery went well, and we were now waiting for his recovery. It was the day of the wedding, and I called my best friend to wish her well. She didn't pick up. Later, I video called one of the bridesmaids and she answered. I asked to talk to Chloe, but she said she's busy getting ready. I said fine, I'll call later. I called again and again, but no response. I thought she was simply busy with the preparations. I called the day after the wedding and still no response. She wouldn't reply to my texts at all. I contacted some of the bridesmaids and they told me that she's very upset with me for dropping out the day before the wedding and that I should make it work no matter what. Some of them said I did what's reasonable and how my husband's health should be my priority, but some others feel like I let down the bride on her big day and I shouldn't expect a word from her anytime soon. Am I the jerk? Edit. I want to clarify that this is the first time my friend has ever acted like this. We faced many difficulties during wedding planning, but she was always a sweetheart about it and made sure to never give a hard time to anyone. She was actually the most chill bride I've met in my life. There was no way I thought she'd react like this over such an important emergency because I didn't even have a previous sign that she'd act like this. Edit 2. I want to add another disclaimer. On the day of the wedding, I stopped calling because I figured she had not replied because she's busy. But later, I was also told she was only not replying to me specifically because she was upset. She had taken a few calls from relatives who couldn't attend because of distance. She specifically didn't respond to me. One of the bridesmaids also pointed out how it's weird that she never called me to ask how my husband's surgery went, and as a best friend, she could take a couple of minutes out of her day to simply see if everything's okay as well. Never thought about this until my friend, the bridesmaid, mentioned it. So now it hurts way more. Not the jerk, and my heart breaks for you to even have to ask this. You did everything perfectly, dear. If it was her in the hospital, would she prefer her now husband to go to a party or stay and sit with her? Or if it was her husband having open heart surgery, would she have the guts to go out and party knowing what he was going through? I'm so glad your husband's surgery went well, and I hope for a speedy recovery. Walmart Karen tries to steal my new scooter. I've encountered a Karen as a kid once and one who was harassing someone else, but until today, never had one of my own as an adult. So after fighting with disability for 15 years, I finally got my mobility scooter. It's been a godsend and the freedom is a wonder. But as I'm sure we've all learned from Reddit, these things are a Karen magnet. And I've learned it firsthand today, and on only my 5th time out on it. So first, quick background. I live in Surrey, British Columbia, and my local Walmart has presently precisely 0 courtesy scooters for customers. They had 4, but all were either stolen or broken. So I'm at Walmart today, just looking for a snack, when suddenly I'm on the floor. It took me a moment to realize what had happened as I saw a woman, I'm guessing in her late 40s, taking my bags off my scooter. "What the heck are you doing?" I shouted. She sneers at me and replies that she's taking the store's scooter because lazy losers like me don't need it. She was of course perfectly able-bodied. Luckily, I've read enough Karen stories by now to know that if she was stupid enough to mistake a brand new mobility scooter with my name on it for one of those cheap gray scooters with the huge shopping baskets on it, there was no point in even trying to reason with her. So I just shouted, "Security!" at the top of my lungs as she went wide-eyed and tried to get on it and drive away. Luckily, some staff were nearby, plus this Walmart had put up railing so that the only way to exit the store was to pass through the registers. So she had no real way to escape the store. The staff that were helping me up called security, and of course they caught her. She kept insisting it was the store scooter, that I didn't need it, yada yada. I pointed out where my name and number were engraved on it, but she stuck to her guns. Police were called, and after reviewing security footage, it was clear she had flat out assaulted me to get me off of the scooter, and that I was on camera entering the store from the mall entrance. She was of course arrested, and I got the customary gift card they always give victims of Karens and a quick story to tell. Luckily, I think the worst I got from the fall was a bruised hip and a wrist sprain. Not the craziest story this sub has heard, but still thought I'd share it while it was fresh in my mind. Reply: never try to reason with a Karen. Reasoning requires logical thinking, and Karens are incapable of it. Good job, OP. You survived an encounter that could have turned deadly. Your quick thinking just may have saved your life. The little old couple from heck. My hotel has had a lot of crazy happenings that I've shared before, but holy cow, this has to win an award for one of the most insane things to happen. First off, I want to say take a seat, grab a drink, a snack, maybe a beer, because holy cow, this is a long one. This little old couple, very well-mannered and seemingly just cheeky, came to check in mid-evening. The wife we'll call Karen and the man we'll call Ken. They were celebrating Karen's diagnosis as melanoma-free and decided to take a vacation to our property using Karen's membership points. They made a joke that I would get to know them by the end of their stay. Not wrong there. And immediately asked where the bar was so they could get a few glasses of wine. They went out for dinner after scoping out the bar for about 10 minutes and come back a good 2 to 3 hours later. They ordered 2 glasses of Chardonnay, 1 glass per person, then sat down in the lobby, spending about 15 minutes on those glasses just chatting. I had a few check-ins and was standing at my front desk station around the corner from the bar when Karen started shouting, "Waiter!" requesting another glass. Obviously, I'm not a waiter, and it's annoying when people act like we're a full service or I'm a dog, but nonetheless, I went and got them a second round. I'd say another 10 minutes passed before they asked for a second round. They started joking around about their marriage and being cheeky old people. I didn't think much of it.
going back to my pod and going back about 15 minutes later with their third round. They started getting really inappropriate around that time, so I told my coworker I was going to cut them off. On their fourth and final round, Ken blatantly states, "We're thinking of getting it on tonight," and then proceeds to go on a big spout of nonsense, which gets Karen pretty angry at him, telling him to shut up. I made sure to make them both aware they were not receiving any more drinks. About a good 20 minutes pass, and my coworker, we'll call him B, and I were on the phones at the desk, working on two separate guest issues. I happened to turn around and saw Karen lying on the floor. I immediately went over to ask what happened and if she was okay. She laughingly explained she fell over one of the lobby chairs. B goes and grabs her a water before asking her if she needed medical assistance, while I grabbed the hotel wheelchair. She declined assistance, but accepted the wheelchair, and out of instinct, I handed B an incident report to get filled out, as it's corporate policy. Now, Ken did not like the idea of his wife answering questions or filling out an incident form without his consent, like it's still the 50s or something. He starts yelling up a storm about, "Nobody talks to my wife but me," or "We ain't signing no BS because we've done nothing wrong." Now, B, who had been understanding as heck and professional as could be, was understandably upset by Ken's ranting. Seeing the proverbial crap show about to go down, B starts giving Ken the verbal smackdown about, "I will have the cops escort you and your stuff out if you do not keep a nice mouth around me." I opted to call the local non-emergency as a precaution. Boy, was I glad I did. Right as I get off the phone with the cops, Ken begins to go on the craziest rant of the century. He straight up grabs B and says, "I bet you like that, don't you?" To which B straight up hit his hand with the clipboard and declared we were going to have to ask them to leave as soon as the cops got here. B comes back to the desk while I'm calling corporate to report the issue and flag their account as a DNR. Ken's still going on his rant for a good 10 minutes. At this time, people are starting to come back from dinner and are passing through watching this old man screaming crazy things at B. While trying to hold B back, I notice that Karen's ankle is very swollen. She tries to get out of the chair while screaming at her husband to shut up and ends up falling again. B tries to go help her up, but Ken starts screaming at him to not come near them and tries to lift his wife himself, ending up falling on top of her. A guest passing through, who's a retired firefighter, came to help pick Karen up and put her back in the wheelchair. He advised we call fire rescue just as a precaution should either guest be hurt. I get on the phone to call 911 and tell them that the guest's ankle is very swollen. B decides to go over and ask if the injury was from the fall or not, while alerting Karen that we called fire rescue anyway as a precaution. She blatantly states the swollen ankle was a pre-existing injury, which I wrote down immediately on my own play-by-play witness report. Ken starts getting agitated with B asking questions and gets up, pushing B into the lobby column while shouting more craziness. B immediately walks away and says to call the cops again because Ken is now drunkenly coming towards the desk and screaming at us. I call 911 to cancel the paramedics and get the police out immediately, but the cops are stuck on a high priority call. Lo and behold, the paramedics still show up, and thank God they did, because honestly, they calmed Ken down with some light conversation and confirmed Karen was okay. Right behind the paramedics, an hour after calling, the police show up. They are the two most built female and male cops I've ever seen, like honestly, body goals, and thank God, cause the nonsense that goes down next. Ken and Karen are upset because the cops are there. The cops are having none of that BS today. Karen gets out of the wheelchair and wobbles her way to the elevator, alongside Ken, who's glaring at B the entire way and still ranting. These two numbskulls don't press the floor button and end up back on all sorts of floors before finally getting off on the right one. I awkwardly ride in the elevator with the cops and lead them, and a stumbling Ken, to the room with a key. However, Karen's nowhere to be found, which makes everyone start panicking. Ken refuses to listen to the cops and takes off down the hallway, saying he needs to find Karen, and the cops now have to wrangle two drunk people while I stand there with the door open feeling useless as heck. They find Karen wandering back onto the elevator and went back down to the lobby, where B sent her back to the elevator and Ken was hiding in the stairwell. Finally, about 30 minutes into the cops being here, they get Ken and Karen into the room to start packing. Karen's starting to argue with Ken, saying it's his fault for convincing her to come to our hotel, and she starts calling him names. She tries to push Ken into the sofa, which causes him to start yelling at her. The cops are at the end of their patience, telling them to get out or get arrested. Karen and Ken keep on stalling for a near 20 minutes before finally getting their stuff into the hallway. Around this time, Ken decides it's a great time to threaten a cop. Ken's got his back against another occupied room's door, banging on it with his fist and yelling, "This is America! I can do whatever I want!" To which the cop continues to say he will arrest Ken if he doesn't stop moving. The female officer starts to coax Ken towards the elevator and attempts to give them both a chance to comply. Karen starts following the female officer, but Ken grabs her by the shirt and starts yanking her back, dragging her across the floor. So you have them bumping into all of the guest room doors and walls, screaming, "Let go of me!" and the cops shouting for Ken to let her go or get tased. The cops finally get Ken and Karen to the elevator. I decide to take the stairs and meet up with B at the front desk just in time for another officer to come in. B's speaking to that officer about pressing charges against Ken, just to be interrupted by a screaming match in the corridor leading from the elevator to the lobby. Ken's starting up a screaming rant against the cops, trying to grab a taser. The male cop grabs him and tries to cuff him, but this late 70s-year-old Ken is holding his own, and it takes 3 cops to get him in cuffs and out the front door. On the way out, Ken shoves a girl with his shoulder, which then causes the girl's mom to start yelling and talking to the cops outside. Karen ends up wobbling into the lobby with the female cop and parks herself in a chair, where she then has the audacity to say, "If I paid for the room, why can't I stay here? I had nothing to do with this mess." To which I proudly state, "By state law, I'm refusing you service." About another hour passes. I get trespass letters for both guests from the local PD, and Karen again asks why she can't stay. The female cop has to repeat what I said in the layman's terms of, "The managers want you to leave the property ASAP." Mind you, I was nice enough to find her lodging at a hotel down the street and called her a cab, so brownie points for me, I guess. By the time the show was over, it was 12:05 a.m., an hour past my shift's end time. B and myself stayed almost another hour writing reports and recalling every time possible. The most handwritten reports I've ever made. I'll update once I go in and see the amount of trouble or reward I'm in for. Update. I'm currently at work, not fired. My GM didn't even look at the report, but my AGM did praise B and I for our professionalism. Ken did try to come back to the property to get some shoes he left, ignoring the trespass letter and claiming he had no idea why he was arrested, to which my GM basically told him to get the heck out. Am I the jerk for not giving my son the PS4 we bought him for Christmas? I have a 14-year-old son, Junior. He's a pretty great kid who is normally very kind, helpful, and is just a joy. This year has been rough due to the state of the world, so my husband and I decided for Christmas we were going to update his phone and get him a PS4 Pro with a couple of games he really likes. We already have a few game systems, but he's been begging for a game system for his room that's solely his. We hid it with all of the kids' presents in our locked closet that the kids know not to go into because it has our gun safe, so major no-no in our home. A few nights ago, my husband and I went to the store, leaving the kids at home, and when we got home, Junior was mad. I asked him what was wrong, and he started going off about how he found the gifts. He was beyond angry that it was the 4 and not the 5, and that the 4 was for losers. I told him he knew he wasn't to go in our closet, no idea how he got in. We have the key on our keychains, and that a game system was a privilege, not a right. He wasn't happy with this and said he didn't want a stupid PS4. I sent him to his room to calm down and grounded him. After some discussion with my husband and no attitude change over the next few days, we decided that he would no longer be getting it. We told Junior and he stormed off and called his grandparents. If you guessed I received an angry call, you would be 100% correct. My parents are furious with me. They think since I already bought it, I have no choice but to give it to him, and teenagers are just moody. I told them our minds had already been made up, that we raised the kids better than this. I was called a horrible parent who doesn't care about my kids. Am I the jerk? Edit. Well guys, Junior has found my post and has came in, apologized, asked for a second chance, and has asked if he can work for the PS4. He told me he used his school ID to get the door open because he knew the presents were in there. His dad and I are proud of him for apologizing and owning up to it, so he will be doing extra chores to earn his gift back. My wife won't stop condescending our son's profession. So basically, my son is a professional aerial performer and is currently performing in this large and popular horror-themed circus where we live. I know I may be biased, but in my opinion, he's really good, and it's just amazing to watch him perform. Maybe a little scary sometimes, and I sometimes worry about him with some of the tricks and acts he does. My wife, however, will just tell people he works in the circus, never mentioning that he's an aerial performer, that he actually works independently and is basically a contractor. I don't know if there are any proper terms,
but this is the best way I can describe it. That he works with a very large and popular circus. Just that he works in the circus. Whenever we are out and she sees a clown, she will point at it and say, "Look, it's our son." And it is very clear she looks down on him for what he does. She assumes he makes next to nothing and is poor. I know he isn't. He doesn't make a crazy amount, but he makes enough to support himself well. This all came to a head when we were with some of her friends, and one of them asked if our son could entertain her kids at a birthday party, promising to pay him generously since he must be struggling. My wife laughed and responded with, "I'll see if he's free." I butted in, saying, "He probably won't be able to since the birthday falls on a day when the popular circus, which is where he works as a headline aerial act, is fully booked because it's so close to the new year." Almost everyone there was shocked since all this info was new to them. My wife looked upset and left. She sat in the car and texted me that she wanted to leave. I stayed for about 20 minutes answering questions and showing them some videos. The woman who asked apologized, saying she was given the impression by my wife that our son was a struggling and failing cheap circus performer and wanted to help him. When I finally left and got in the car, my wife yelled at me, saying that I made her look like an idiot and a horrible mother in front of her friends. When we got home, she stormed out of the car and locked herself in our bedroom crying loudly. She's been like this for almost an hour now, and I'm starting to feel awful and like I'm the jerk. I could have just left it alone, so am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If telling the truth makes her look like a horrible mother, then she is one. You only told your friends the son's real occupation. Of course, it didn't align with her description of him because she deliberately deprecated his value and his profession. She talked about him contemptuously and denied his hard work and career achievements. When you revealed the truth, it exposed her as an incompatible parent at best and abolitionist of his job and accomplishments at worst. Her friends must have been stunned when you told them the truth. It was foreseeable that she'll be upset. Who wouldn't be? She deals with the backlash of her actions now and is prone to face social repercussions and the accompanying prejudices as well. But she caused it. For the record, there's nothing wrong with clowns or low-ladder circus workers as well. They're no deemed any less. She shouldn't have said those things even if they were correct. Also, there's nothing wrong with entertaining kids at birthday parties. It's an equitable side gig and easy-made money. I hope you understand it because it genuinely reads as you depict these workers as such and you didn't bother to clarify otherwise. You're the jerk. Look, I get it. You want your wife to accept him for who he is. Been there, done that. Well, let me tell you, as a mother, when you have a grown child who chooses a profession, if you can even call it that doesn't make you proud, it's impossible to accept. You love your kids and want them to make you proud. I had a daughter who chose a line of work that I strongly disagreed with, and as much as her father tried to get me to accept it, I ultimately cut her out of my life. I knew her life would go down the drain in that environment, and it did. I refused to support her self-destruction. She passed on October 3rd, 2014 from health complications that never would have happened had she not gone into that industry. Do I miss her? No. I miss my daughter. What she became was far from my daughter. This is why us moms want what's best for our kids. It's something fathers cannot understand because you lack the bond that we have. Call me a Karen all you want. That seems to be the new name for moms who actually care about their kids. Bruh. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I'd be bragging about him if he were my son, but hey, that's just me. Grandma attempts to ruin our Christmas. This story is about my paternal grandmother. Let's call her Miss F. It takes place over the course of about 1 year in the blessed pre-lockdown times. Before we get into it, however, let's give you some background on Miss F and my relationship with her. Miss F owns 2 houses next to the school I attended before leaving my hometown to study at university. My dad used to pay me to do some chores around her house, which she wasn't able to do herself due to some disabilities stemming from long-term alcoholism. I've heard some stories about her behavior from different family members, and she was divorced 5 times. While working for her, I quickly realized how difficult she could be, but I always thought my family members were exaggerating. That was until this story happened. So let's get into it. Back in the summer of 2018, I was visiting my parents in my hometown. I had been living elsewhere for about 3 years at that point. I decided to visit Miss F as I had a pretty good relationship with her back then. I was one of the few family members that was actively in contact with her for other than financial reasons, and she seemed excited about my visit as we hadn't seen each other in about a year. When I called her to set up the time and date, she asked me whether it was possible for me to borrow my mom's car, I don't own one myself, to help her pick up some furniture she wanted to add to a room for a live-in housekeeper. I cleared everything with my mom as I thought it wouldn't be much trouble. The day came and she picked up so much furniture it barely fit into the car, but everything seemed fine. I carried the furniture into the designated room through 3 very narrow staircases. It was a very old house in Germany. Afterwards, we had some coffee and cake together before I left. I then dropped off my mom's car and headed out to party with some friends from school whom I hadn't seen in a while. The next day was when everything began. At around 9 a.m., I was still slightly hungover from the great party the night before. She called me, demanding to know where I was, since I apparently agreed to help her assemble the furniture we bought. This was never agreed upon. She also demanded that I would bring the car again, as she had forgotten to pick up some things the day before. The car, however, wasn't even in town since my mom, the car's owner, needed it that day and had already left. I tried to explain to her that the car wasn't available that day, that we hadn't agreed to me helping her out the next day, and that I was in no condition to drive and build furniture, even if I wanted to. I did offer to reschedule to another day that week, but she wouldn't have it. She couldn't accept that it was literally impossible for me to fulfill her request, and the debate got heated. I don't remember specifics, but she tried to guilt trip me, which is when I snapped and told her that I wasn't her flying monkey here to serve at her pleasure. She hung up after that, and I thought that would be that. Over the course of the week, I tried calling her several times, since I still wanted to help, but wasn't able to reach her before I had to go back to my university town. Fast forward to Christmas 2018. I was back at my parents' place for the holidays, and the last interaction I had with Miss F was the phone call I just described. On Christmas Eve, my dad told me that she would be joining us for dinner, as was tradition, and that she wanted me to pick her up. Now, due to my dad's job, it was up in the air whether he would be able to join us that evening. So he added that Miss F would only attend if he was also there. In case he wasn't, I was just supposed to pick up the presents from her place. As it turned out, Dad had to work that night, so I just went and picked up the bag of presents. This was an ordeal in itself. I drove to Miss F's place, parked in front of it, rang the doorbell, and waited for her to open. This could usually take a while since her house is big and she isn't the fastest anymore due to the aforementioned disabilities. After a longer time than usual, I called her landline to inform her I was there. She picked up and told me she was still in the bathroom and would be right there. It took her about 10 minutes to get to the door. Usually it takes like 1, during which I was waiting in the snowy streets at -5 degrees Celsius, 23 degrees Fahrenheit for my American friends. When she came to the door, she handed me the bag of presents for my parents, brothers. She also asked for me to wish everyone a happy Christmas and added that she was hoping I would enjoy my present. I thanked her, said my goodbyes, and drove back to my parents' place to enjoy Christmas Eve. Evening had come. We've had dinner with my mom, her mother, a lovely woman, and my 2 younger brothers. We already had unwrapped most of the presents before dinner, as we usually do. All in all, a very pleasant and typical Christmas Eve for my family. After dinner, we've started drinking homemade mulled wine when I remembered I still had Miss F's gift and handed them out. Me and my brother each received an envelope with a card in it, but suspiciously, mine differed in size and color. I opened it and read its content. This is where the fun begins. While my brothers each received a complimenting message with 50 euros enclosed in the card, I received a scalding letter saying that she was still devastated by my behavior the previous summer and that she was expecting an apology for the disrespectful way I had treated her. Remember, her demands were literally impossible to fulfill. I admit I snapped and said something that could have been taken as disrespect, but continued to reach out wanting to help her while I was in town. I didn't really know how to react. I was speechless and threw the card on the table before going to grab another mug of mulled wine. When I got back from the kitchen, the older of my 2 younger brothers had read the card and loudly exclaimed something akin to, "What the heck?" At that point, everyone noticed something was wrong, and I read the card out loud. I don't remember the exact wording, sorry. I then told them about what happened during summer. Nobody really believed how insane Miss F was, especially since she had been quietly planning her revenge for about half a year. The aforementioned brother who had some extra money due to a paid internship, asked the youngest of us three whether he needed the 50 euros and offered to pay it himself, as he wanted to take all the 3 cards and throw them into her face. My youngest brother refused the monetary offer, but loved the idea, so that's what they did. I don't really know what happened afterwards. All I know is that Miss F was not expecting that reaction, as apparently no one in our family had ever stood up to her the way we did. This concludes the Christmas part of the story. We didn't really dwell on the topic for the rest of the holidays and still had an amazing celebration together. Fast forward to the summer of 2019. My parents had planned a big family reunion to celebrate a couple of important dates in their lives, coinciding major birthdays plus a significant wedding anniversary. That party was the first time I interacted with Miss F since the Christmas incident. I acted as if nothing had happened since I didn't want to cause a scene on my parents' special day with most of our extended family being there. This is a rare occasion since the family is spread around the Western world, mostly Western Europe and the US. We were together for about a week in my hometown, going to different dinner places every night and had a great and memorable time. I even got along with Miss F, albeit superficially and only in group settings. We never talked one-on-one. One evening, we were having dinner at a really nice place, and she came over to the table me, my brothers, and my cousins sat at. They all know what happened during the previous Christmas and were pretty angry with her. She asked whether I was willing to visit her one-on-one so we could have a talk about what had happened. I was happy too, as I don't like to hold on to grudges, but asked her that we talk at eye level like adults with mutual respect, as she had a tendency to twist the truth to suit her needs. I didn't say that part for obvious reasons. She agreed and asked me to call her to set up a time and date after the week-long celebration was over. A day later, I received an email from Miss F stating that she no longer had any interest in a conversation, as it was apparent from my demands that I hadn't grown and wasn't ready to apologize. She also wrote that she wasn't able to speak to me on an eye level, as she had much more life experience than me. Again, I didn't really know how to process this. I still don't. But enough time has passed that I have stopped caring about my relationship with her. Up to this day, nothing has really changed about this situation. I've seen her a couple of times at different family gatherings since then, and the interactions were fine. Probably because neither of us wants to dig this crap back up during otherwise great family times. But the issue itself was never really resolved. So yeah, that's the story about how I learned that the reported insanity of my grandmother, Miss F, was not exaggerated. It might be mild compared to other stories on here, and I'm very happy that I have the rest of my loving and supporting family to rely on, but it's still something that has changed me in a way, so I felt like sharing. Hope you enjoyed reading. Reply. There's a quote I love and I feel it fits here. Toxic people make you think you're holding a grudge when you're really holding a boundary. She tried to tell you you're holding a grudge by not apologizing to her. What you're doing is standing your ground and demanding she treat you with the respect you deserve as one adult to another. Good for you. Reply. This is similar to the relationship I have with my mom. I love her, but she uses me as her errand girl more than my siblings and complains about me the most when I'm usually the only one helping her. You can't disagree with her and often tells me why I can't just be a good daughter and do as she says when I stand up for myself. I've gone low contact and put up more boundaries about what I'm willing to do. I'm not even the oldest of her kids. I do have to say I disagree that she's allowed to not give presents if she doesn't want to. It was just petty of her waiting that long for her revenge when OP actually helped her. She just can't admit she was wrong, that her errand was impossible to accomplish, and OP should just cut contact forever because this is a woman who will never apologize or see OP as an equal standing adult and just a kid that she's allowed to boss around. Reply. Stand your ground, young man. I've had several people older than me try to insinuate that I was wet behind the ears and knew nothing about life. I've done numerous jobs of widely varying difficulties, including owning and operating my own business. I've traveled the world and lived in 2 foreign nations. I have endured what should have been a life-ending brain injury and am now a dialysis patient. I've spent several years homeless. I even have a postgraduate degree. Incidentally, the last individual to have made this claim has been a housewife most of her life, had never held a job, and has never left this country. So please take her "I have more experience" proclamation with a grain of salt. Am I the jerk for telling my sister she's the reason I'll never adopt? I, 30 female, have 3 biological siblings who are 37, 36, and 33, and a sister who's 31. My sister, who I will call Becky, her biological mom is my mom's cousin. The story of Becky getting adopted by my parents was basically her biological parents were addicts that just came one day out of the blue for a visit, then abandoned her at my house. She was 5 weeks old. For a few weeks, they tried to get my cousin's family to take her, but those jerks didn't want the shame of a baby with medical issues that was born out of wedlock. My parents fell in love with her, and the rest was history. Thankfully, all Becky really needed was love and a good home. She beat a lot of odds and leads a healthy, successful life. My parents never hid the fact that Becky was adopted. She's biracial, and we all learned about her heritage growing up. Everything was perfect until her parents reached out when she was 22. They were clean and wanted a relationship. In the space of a few months, she became a different person. It was like she hated us for taking her away from her biological parents. As soon as she finished college and got the 20,000 euro check my parents gifted her, it's a startup we all got. She ghosted us and sent a letter to my parents telling them if they ever tried to contact her again, she'll file a restraining order. She got married and none of us even knew. Her mother passed when she was 26, which led her father to relapse, then unfortunately passed 8 months later. After Becky reached out, my parents welcomed her back with open arms, but I still can't. Which leads to now. Me and my husband recently had a baby via IVF after 6 years of trying, 5 natural. I brought my son to meet the family tonight, and after dinner, the girls of us were in the living room. I thought up how he was worth everything, explaining my struggles, and that I'm gonna start naturally trying soon so he will have a sibling. Becky made a comment about why we didn't look into adoption since the world was already overpopulated. I told her, honestly, we thought about it, but after all the crap you pulled, I'm afraid you're the reason I will never adopt. Becky yelled at me to get over it already, then left, and my mother said I shouldn't have spoken to her like that. So in the end, I ended up leaving early too. My siblings are on my side, but my parents are extremely mad. Reply. Becky was abandoned by her birth parents and then abandoned by the rest of the family who didn't want to take on a child with health needs. That type of thing can create huge issues and a disordered attachment style, basically insecurity over whether people really love her. I'm involved in foster care, and this type of thing is very normal. Becky perhaps felt that she almost needed to abandon her adoptive family in order to prove that her biological family really did love her. A bit twisted, but I'm sure her emotions at the time were very, very intense. This is why in foster care, even when it is very messy and complicated, we usually try to make sure kids have contact with their biological family, so they don't develop some fantasy of what their real family is like and run off to them the first chance they get. Did Becky act fantastically? No, she didn't. But being the only adopted kid in your family, and biracial too, must not have been very easy for her. I'm sure she felt quite different a lot of the time. She asked why you wouldn't adopt, and she got her answer. I'd leave it there. Reply. I don't know, I disagree. A troubled past doesn't make you not a jerk when you treat other people like crap. It explains it, but it doesn't excuse it. A kid that has a rough home life and then goes and bullies someone is still a jerk, just like her sister is still a jerk in my opinion. Edit. And also, she took 20 grand off them and then dipped and threatened a restraining order. 100% a jerk move. Everyone sucks here. Becky shouldn't have asked that question, but your answer was just as crappy as her asking the question. She was a mixed up young adult who had complicated feelings about her adoption and her biological parents. That's pretty usual. You could have shut her rude question down without dragging that all up and upsetting not only her, but the rest of your family as well. Not the jerk. Becky is also the reason I will never adopt, even though I really, really want to. I've just read too many stories like hers, and I couldn't handle it if that happened to me. You're the jerk. As an adoptee, I can say a lot of us are tired of the "you should be so grateful, your adoptive family is your real family" remarks. It's shoved down our throats all of our lives. And the thing is, I was adopted because my parents wanted a traditional family. Guess what? I never fit in. I was never good enough, and my family are jerks. Biracial adoptions can be very problematic. If my birth mom had contacted me in my 20s, I probably would have split too. She was forced to give me up, and I will always wonder if she'd still be alive if she could have kept me. Everyone sucks here. Your sister and you have a lot going on, but that has nothing to do with adoption. Your situation is already messy, so it's not going to be the normal adoption procedure. I think it's incredibly harmful for you to say that to your sister, not because of how it hurts her feelings, but your views on adoption. You have to know that your situation is not the norm, And you definitely were just saying that to hurt her, because you have justified unresolved emotions and conflict. I just think your comment was out of line and irrelevant and a very low blow. Her adoption already made her spiral once. I don't know why you're using that to hurt her. Just sounds mean. Granted, that's y'all beef. Your issues are regular lack of communication and interpersonal relationships, not because she's adopted. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Becky? Please let us know.
Tell Becky to say hi to Uncle Jesse for us. Everywhere you look, everywhere you...
Am I the jerk for calling my husband a bad father because he allows his adult daughter's birthday to overshadow Christmas every year? When I met my husband, James, he had a 14-year-old daughter, Ella. Ella and I never really bonded as she doesn't really like people. James always told me to leave Ella alone and respect her boundaries. I do believe he took her boundaries too far in some cases, as Ella is now a 27-year-old woman who refuses to speak when she doesn't want to. I have a 13-year-old daughter, Ava. The pregnancy was a surprise, and I know the timing is bad that I got pregnant right around the time I met Ella. And honestly, I've always felt that James prefers Ella. Ella is a lot like him personality-wise and is very subtle, but I feel like he loves Ella more. Ella never accepted her sister or I, but I've made peace with that because getting Ella to speak is literally like pulling teeth. Ava hates Ella, but she knows that she has to be civil to everyone. Ella's birthday is December 23rd, and as a result, James never made too big of a deal about Christmas. Her birthday always took priority. This became an issue when Ava was born. James had always promised Ella he would take her to Europe for her 16th birthday, and Ella was insistent that it had to be on her actual birthday. So the Christmas when Ava was 2, he actually missed Christmas, and we had the first fight of our entire marriage. He also told Ella crazy things, like if a man doesn't make a big deal out of her birthday, to dump him, and that her birthday is much more important than Christmas. As a result, Ava complains every year that James cares more about Ella's birthday than about Christmas, and that she thinks Ella gets an unfair amount of money spent on her. Her birthdays are usually expensive, and 2 years ago she had a December wedding, which James fully paid for. Even that Christmas, he refused to not do something elaborate for her birthday and couldn't understand why Ava was annoyed. Also, Ella hosts a huge Christmas Eve, which we are all invited to, but Ava and I don't go, due to it mostly being her husband's family, so everything in December sometimes feels like it's about Ella. This year, I feel bad, because I couldn't get Ava what she really wanted because it's out of stock, but Ella just had a baby, and my husband bought her a ring with the baby's birthstone, which Ava knows about. Now, Ella wants to go to Colorado for her birthday and Christmas Eve. James said he is going to go, because he can drive back and be home by about 10. I finally got annoyed and asked if he thinks he spends a fair amount of money and time and energy on Ella versus Ava. And I said he makes every Christmas about Ella and her birthday. He said I was being unfair because Ella has never excluded me from her plans, though she is rude and doesn't talk to me either. Finally, I snapped at him that he's a bad father because one of his kids is a grown woman and one is not. He's now upset and says that was meant to say, I just don't like Ella, and he tries his best. You're the jerk. I'm seeing a lot here that actually supports your husband's side. You really just don't like Ella, and you resent that energy that he puts into celebrating her birthday. I'm not seeing where it necessarily has to take away from Ava. Does he also make a big deal for Ava's birthday? This is missing from the post. Your husband bought a ring to celebrate Ella's kid. That's nice, and it has nothing to do with the fact that you couldn't get Ava what she wanted for Christmas because it was out of stock. Trying to force your husband to ignore or downplay his daughter's birthday because it's 2 days before Christmas and you seem to want him to entirely focus on his daughter with you isn't a good look. It really doesn't seem like he's neglecting Ava here from what you've written. Reply. Honestly, I'm leaning towards this too, especially since OP has yet to answer a single question about what he does for Ava. Maybe because she would admit he goes above and beyond for her too, and drops everything else to make sure she has a magical birthday. In fact, OP only tells us what he does for Ella for Christmas. I see nothing about what he does for Ava, so I can't tell if she is getting the same Christmas treatment as Ella. Because treating Ella for her birthday is not the same as treating her for Christmas. The only way to judge this is to know how he handles birthdays for both girls, and Christmas for both girls. It sounds to me like he doesn't do a lot for Christmas for either of them. You're the jerk. You're jealous of your stepchild, and you've probably encouraged Ava's attitude towards her sister. If he, subtly, seems to prefer Ella because their personalities click and they get each other, That's a common issue with parents and kids. The ease with someone you easily get can be picked up by others, even though you don't love your other kids less. You just have a natural comfort level with a similar one. So many red flags here that you're acting out of immaturity. Jealous that he spent money on his daughter's wedding? What? Should he have quickly rushed out to spend the same amount on his younger daughter's gift? And why do you seem to blame him that what you wanted to get Ava was out of stock? He wasn't supposed to get his grandchild a gift then? That's crazy. He's not perfect, but you really need to get a grip on being an adult. Not the jerk. Divorce him now and take what you can. I too had a husband who favored his biological kid over the one we had together. I took him to the cleaners, and now he pays me $4,000 a month in child support. He's a high earner, and it sounds like your husband is too. I also got to keep the house. Call me what you will. The system exists for a reason, so use it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
That last commenter, though, she kind of triggered me.
Am I the jerk for telling him it's not his choice if my son wants to start working out and lifting weights? I truly cannot tell if I'm in the wrong here. I'm giving both sides here because it's only fair you see his point of view as well. I'm 27, female, and my fiance is 29, male. He's not my son, who's 11. He's not his biological father, but he has been a very active father figure and a role model to my son for nearly 5 years. His biological father sees him all but maybe 2 to 3 times a year. My fiance calls my son his own. That is all that matters. That is his boy, period. I admittedly still have a hard time with this some days because as the months pass, I have noticed we have quite a different idea on things that are right versus wrong. He chooses to be much stricter than I am. I have many rules, but I am admittedly a lot more easygoing when it comes to certain things. I won't go into everything here because it's far too much, but the latest issue is the fact that my son has expressed to me that he wants to start lifting weights, small 2-pound dumbbells that me and my fiance have. He said the reason behind this is because he feels like he isn't very strong due to not being a very active kid currently. We have no yard, so he's cooped up a lot. And apparently some kids at school have commented and called him puny or small fry or weak. So I tell my son that he can use me and my fiance's dumbbells because they are small weights and they're not going to bulk him up, you know? Well, my son asks to use them yesterday after school and my fiance immediately says no. He says, "You aren't using our dumbbells. You are 11 and there is no need for you to be weightlifting." My son is visibly upset and says, "Mom, John said I can't use them because I'm 11 and there is no need." Once my son was out of earshot, I confronted this and said, "Listen, I already told him he could use them, so not only are you making me look like a jerk, but I also don't understand why you're saying he cannot use them." His only response was, "He's 11 years old. There's literally no reason for him to be lifting weights." He got incredibly defensive about it, so I said, "It's not your choice if my son wants to lift weights. They are tiny weights. It will help him build his self-esteem." Now I'm being called a jerk because he has legitimate reasons for not wanting this, and I'm curious if I actually am. Not the jerk. I was ready to say you were, because lifting too much weight at a young age is dangerous and easily causes irreparable damage to growing bodies. But then you got to the part where you were talking about 2-pound dumbbells. 2-pound dumbbells are perfectly safe for an 11-year-old to use. It is good and healthy for kids to be active, and if that's the option you have for him to be active, there isn't anything wrong with that. You're talking about 2-pound weights here, not 20-pound weights. Definitely not the jerk for many reasons. First, I don't see the harm in your kid lifting weights, especially small ones, but that's not even the point. These are weights you already have, and you're not spending money on something that can be a whim for him. Second, I think you do need to establish boundaries. Of course, your fiance being so involved in your son's life should have some say, but really the conversation should be reversed. He should be talking to you out of earshot if you are disagreeing about something. Ultimately, he should be deferring to you more on what your son can and cannot do. I think your fiance is overstepping. I'm not saying it's your way or the highway. Your fiance is living in the house also. But things like this shouldn't be making him so defensive. OP. He oversteps quite often. Honestly, if people didn't know that my son had a different father, they would automatically think my child is his because of how many decisions he makes for my son without consulting me. He has fully taken on the "this is my kid" role. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I truly do. He loves my son more than he loves me, I am convinced. That is his boy. But holy wow, would I just love to have one day where I can be the decision maker for my kid. Reply: That's not normal. I'm worried for your son. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her fiance? Please let us know.
I think fiance is afraid he'll be jealous once that boy gets swole and makes all kinds of gains.
Karen, my ex-wife, demands I build her a chicken coop. I, 35 male, divorced my ex-wife about a year ago. We have 2 daughters together and they split time between our houses. Because of this, we still have to talk to each other on a regular basis. When we were married, we got some chickens. She wanted them, but it was a friend of mine that actually gave them to us. The original chickens have since passed, but she still has several. When we got the chickens, I built them a coop and a run. This was several years ago, and she's telling me it needs to be rebuilt. I suggested she get one from the store. She said no, none were big enough and she didn't like any. She wanted me to build one. I said heck no, I'm not doing that. She said I should because the chickens were from my friend, and if I had built it better in the first place, we wouldn't need a new one. She kept bothering me and asking for it, so I eventually gave her a price. The estimated cost of the wood, plus $30 per hour it would take, and an extra $50 for being rude. This was high because building a run and coop takes a lot of time and lumber. It was way more than one at the store would cost. She said I was being ridiculous when I sent her the number. She says we're supposed to be a team working on it, and I shouldn't force the chickens to live in an unsafe coop. I told her she could build one herself. She said she can't afford it. Now she's saying I'm neglecting the chickens and is saying she wants to redo the custody agreement. Now I'm wondering if I should just give her the coop. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Please tell me you have her saying that she wants to redo the custody agreement because of a chicken coop in writing. Not the jerk. Once your wife assumed responsibility for the chickens, they became her responsibility. I would take pictures of the current state of the chicken coop. If she actually wants to use that as an excuse to redo the custody arrangement, your lawyer should use the pictures to point out that your wife insisted on keeping the chickens and allowed their living conditions to deteriorate. You suggested an economical solution would be for your ex to buy a coop from the store. She refused. If you're paying child support, that does not include chicken support. And for that alone, she is trying to drag you back into court to try to change the custody agreement. If she's so readily willing to neglect her chickens out of spite against OP, what else is she neglecting? If the living conditions are that bad, OP could report her to animal control. Handled correctly, OP and his attorney would make his ex look like a total flake and an idiot in court. OP remains rational while X looks foolish and incompetent. If OP has not done so, he needs to start a forget you binder to thoroughly document everything to protect himself. If she's threatening to go nuclear over a chicken coop, she will do it on the other stuff as well. I don't think that she understands how divorce really works. You're the jerk. She's right in saying that you're supposed to be a team. It's really petty of you to refuse to build her a chicken coop just because you two got divorced. She's still the mother of your kids, and the least you could do is build her a chicken coop. Anytime my ex needs something, I just do it for her or buy it for her. That's what healthy co-parenting is. It causes fights when my current wife gets upset with me. She works, but I'm currently unemployed. But it's like I tell her, I'm a package deal. You knew what you were getting into when you decided to marry me. My kids and their mother will always be a priority of mine because that's called maturity. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his ex-wife? Please let us know.
Tell baby mama I'll make her a chicken coop in Minecraft. I've been wanting to play forever.
Entitled mother leaves baby in pram, expects worker to look after it. I worked for a couple of years at a major historic tourist attraction in London. It was good fun and I immensely enjoyed it, although things could sometimes be manic busy, and although most customers were friendly, some could be somewhat unpleasant. Same as anywhere really. It also had some things to do for kids, and while manning these, I came to learn just how entitled and irresponsible some parents can truly be. One of the features in the garden is a maze. It's not particularly for kids, although they can go in if they want, and a lot of them like it. Parents can take pushchairs in if they want, although the staff have a right to make parents leave pushchairs, strollers for Americans, outside if it gets very busy. That day was a hot summer Saturday, and had been very, very busy. However, by the mid-afternoon, through flow had thinned out a bit, and I was manning the maze on my own as I had done before. I still had 3 or 4 groups coming through every minute, and I had taken the decision to ask parents to leave their push cars outside the maze. A lady, not particularly Karen-esque, but young and reeking of cheap perfume and entitlement, stalked up to me with her ticket and a baby in a pushchair. I scanned her ticket, but politely told her that she needed to leave her pushchair outside. She scoffed at me and put her pushchair in a line with all the others. Meanwhile, another group of tourists had come up, and I was busy scanning their tickets. I paid little attention to the lady as she walked past. However, as I rapidly scanned through all the new tourists, I glanced at her pushchair and realized the baby was still inside. I quickly ran into the maze, and after only a few seconds, I saw the lady. She saw me and hissed angrily, and this is an approximation of the ensuing interaction. Entitled Mom.
What are you doing here? I've left my baby out there with you.
Me. I know, and you're not allowed to do that. You'll have to come out and take the baby in with you.
But can't you look after him?
My duties in the maze included scanning tickets, selling tickets, advising visitors, and managing the many groups of unruly French, German, and Spanish teenagers on language exchanges. My duties did not include looking after smelly babies. Me. Madam, I'm here to look after the maze. I'm not here to perform babysitting services for you. I have to walk around quite a bit, and I cannot spend all my time looking after your baby. Kids, including babies, are allowed in the maze, but not pushchairs. I'm afraid you'll either have to take the baby with you or leave the maze.
It's the first break from him I've had all day,
she whined. Nonetheless, if you won't come and get your baby, who has been unattended for more than a minute now, I'm going to have to call security, I said, bringing my radio up to my mouth and hovering my finger over the send button. Now, are you going to get your baby, or do I have to call security? I asked. She snorted and angrily marched out of the maze and grabbed the baby, who luckily was still there. In hindsight, I should have just called security and let them deal with it, and not let the baby out of my sight, regardless of what a jerk his mother was. But all was well that ended well. She ended up taking the baby around the maze, and about 20 minutes later, she came to get the, now empty, pushchair. The look of pure hate she gave me would have alarmed the Rock, but luckily off she went, and I was not troubled by her again. You're supposed to always want customers to come back again, but there are some exceptions. She was definitely one of them. Reply. Not surprised at all. Back in the day, I used to work for a major department store, and the amount of parents who would just leave their kids for a minute in front of the TV displays while they did a day's shopping was astounding. We ended up posting signs saying any kids left unattended for longer than 5 minutes would be taken to the security office. On a weekend, we still had 10 to 15 kids a day taken to security because their parents assumed we would watch them. Am I the jerk for calling my wife crazy after she screamed at our son? Me, 34 male, and my wife, Jen, who's 32, have a wonderful son named Robbie, who's 7. One thing you need to know about Jen is that she is a perfectionist. She's constantly cleaning, sterilizing, and organizing things around the house. This has been an issue in our relationship because I constantly feel like I'm walking on eggshells around her. Her OCD tendencies have gone into overdrive ever since Robbie was born. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that she's diligent when it comes to keeping our home clean and healthy. However, I feel like it's become unhealthy, specifically regarding Robbie. Robbie has cried on several occasions because he's the only one in his friend group that can't have company over. He's rarely allowed to visit friends, and when he does, he has to immediately shower. I've addressed these issues with Jen, but she refuses to see me and Robbie's point of view. The incident. Yesterday, Robbie, Jen, and myself were all at home. Jen had just finished cleaning the carpet in the living room and then went to clean the bathroom. Robbie wanted a glass of milk, so he poured himself a glass and went into the living room to watch TV. At some point, Robbie accidentally knocked over his glass, which spilled some milk onto the carpet. I was in my bedroom. The next thing I know, I hear Jen screaming at the top of her lungs. I rush into the living room and see Jen screaming at Robbie while he cries in the corner. He looked terrified. He just kept frantically apologizing and shaking. Jen screamed,
I just cleaned this carpet. Why didn't you drink the milk in the kitchen?
I stepped in and told Jen to calm down. It's just a little milk, no big deal. She continued to yell nonstop and started aggressively cleaning the milk while losing it at Robbie. I told Robbie to go into his room so Jen and I could talk alone. After he left, I told Jen that she shouldn't have screamed at him like that. She defended herself by saying that he knew the rules and should have known better. I told her that he's a little kid who made a mistake that anyone could have made. After things continued to escalate, I realized that there was no getting through to her. I yelled, Robbie and I are sick and tired of your BS. Robbie can't even be a kid because he's constantly terrified of you. I'm not gonna sit back and let you do this to me and Robbie anymore. You're crazy." She was dead silent and just went back to mindlessly cleaning the carpet. I spoke with Robbie and eventually calmed him down by taking him out for ice cream. After we got back from ice cream, I saw that Jen had locked herself in the spare bedroom. She refuses to acknowledge me and hasn't spoken to me since yesterday. For the first time in years, I saw her go a whole night and morning without cleaning. I'm starting to feel like I went too far, but I was just trying to defend my son. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Listen, this goes way deeper than Jen just having a cleaning issue. It's become obsessive and she needs professional help because she's obviously only been getting worse. She's traumatizing your son for simple mistakes and ruining his childhood by isolating him from his peers. You need to make serious and immediate changes, starting with deciding if Robbie living with her is actually good for him, or if you need to find a way to distance Jen until she gets her head on straight. I know Reddit has a chronically online "just divorce them" take on most marital disputes, but if this is how she continues to behave, I'd honestly describe her behavior as horrible, in which both case Robbie and you need to get out for the sake of your own mental health and well-being. If she's finally able to approach a conversation reasonably and get help and actually improve, then by all means, do what you feel is right. Normally, I wouldn't advocate for yelling at your spouse, but from what you've said, you've tried communicating with her multiple times for an ongoing issue, and her behavior in this incident was absolutely abhorrent. And if yelling is what it took to get it through her head that she was in the wrong, or to at least de-escalate the situation long enough to attend to your son, then oh well. Not the jerk. I gotta admit, I don't like calling people crazy, but in this case, I gotta say, I wouldn't react much differently. Well, actually, I would react slightly differently. I would say that she has to go to mandatory mental health counseling or we're talking divorce time. And I wouldn't be remotely joking. Your wife is horrible to your son, period. As his father, it's your job to protect him, and that's your first duty above all others. If you don't, you're going to have a kid that grows up with all kinds of issues, or minimally a lot of resentment that he wasn't allowed to have a normal childhood. If you want your kid to walk away at 18 and never speak to you two again, her for being horrible and you for being her enabler, well, keep on doing what you're doing. Everyone sucks here. If this has been a consistent problem, why haven't you two sought a couples counselor, or at least a therapist for her? You're not oblivious. As for your wife, my long-term girlfriend also has OCD, and when she feels like things are dirty, she has never, ever yelled at someone that cannot understand. Even when she yells at me, she takes a moment to step away, relax, and come back and talk it through rationally. She's the bigger jerk here, but by not seeking help, you've enabled the issue to swell. The only innocent person here is your son. I highly suggest putting him in therapy too, in order to help him process his emotions and fears. Ex-wife wants to itemize and split the cost of everything. So my ex-wife and I used to have a great relationship, but she's become petty and somewhat vindictive these last couple months. Our relationship started going downhill after her daughter, my ex-stepdaughter, broke into my house and stole from me and my new wife while we were on vacation together. Yes, I invited my ex-wife and her boyfriend to come on vacation with us too, so it would be a family thing. My current wife was completely fine with it. Not only did we invite them, we paid for everything: plane tickets, rental house, meals, activities, etc. We've done this before and it was nice. While we were on this vacation, my ex-wife's daughter broke into our house and stole from us. We had to file a police report because some of the things stolen were medication and we couldn't get new prescriptions without filing a police report. This upset my ex-wife, even though we told her before we called the police and she said, "Do what you need to do." Before this, my ex and I would pretty much just buy what the kids needed while we had them. Every once in a while, she'd ask me to split the cost of some things and I would. I have never asked her to split the cost of anything prior to this, but lately she has been asking to split the cost of just about everything. Fine, whatever. I usually get most of the things for the kids anyway. About a month ago, my son needed some new equipment for indoor lax. She asked if I would split. I said fine. When she took him out shopping, they couldn't find everything, so I bought most of it online. I told her what she bought and how much, and I told her what I bought and how much. It turned out she owed me for the split. It was only $40. I would have let it go, but she hounded me for a week over $5. This ticked her off. She'd be fine when I have to pay her, but gets upset when she has to pay me. I only asked her for the portion of the split because she asked me to split the cost in the first place. We argued back and forth, and then she came up with a list of things we should not have to split, and anything else we would split. So I started keeping track of things that I paid for that were to be split between us. So she gave me her list and what I owe her. Not a lot. I owe her $80. But when I gave her my list and her share, she now owes me $425. Reply: start the spreadsheet. I would take pictures of every receipt and itemize every expense. Time to be petty. This reminds me of a couple we went on a double date with, where they were discussing who ate more chicken wings and what percentage of the bill each should pay down to the quarter. Of course, not to be outdone, me and the hubby had to argue over our bill, and at the last moment, tell the waitress it doesn't matter who pays since it all comes out of the same account. Reply: one person who we are no longer friends with took it a step further. One night, we had a group of friends out and we were paying the bill. Everyone was slowly chucking cash in, rounding up to the nearest $5 to $10 where they could, etc. I look over and see friends sitting there, quietly lip quivering. He used to do this when nervous or being deceptive. Someone grabs the cash and counts it, and we're $5 over. They throw it to someone who overpaid by too much, and we're done. Later, I work it and confirm with others, old mate was sitting there hoping no one would notice he put no cash in and got away with a free meal at the expense of his friends. He didn't last long after that. Reply: my nephew-in-law has a kid from a previous relationship before he married my niece. He used to pay a monthly amount and then additional funds through the year for clothes, hobbies, etc. Let's say it was $200 a month for child support alone. X has regularly stopped visitations and contact until mediation to put pressure on him to give more money. The last settlement agreement was through legal mediation, and it was agreed that the mom would get £225 per month, but nephew-in-law would no longer have to pay additional costs, as mom would be paying clothes and hobbies. It was all agreed and signed off. Nephew-in-law calculated that he was paying less per year on the new agreement as he no longer had the ad hoc costs. As soon as school is about to start, X was texting nephew-in-law that he owes this much for the school clothes and this much for the school hobbies. He just sent the mediation agreement, highlighting it's not his problem. He also started filing for full custody because X was denying access. Last week, X dumped the kid and their belongings at nephew-in-law's because she's pregnant with a new money-making baby and a teenager who hates her as too much hard work. Am I the jerk for not taking my kids on my ex's days? My ex and I have 2 kids, 15 male and 13 female. I have them every other Monday through Thursday. Around a month or 2 ago, he called me and said that his sister was in the ICU after an accident, and he asked me to take the kids for a couple days so he could see her. I was reluctant because earlier this year he gave me a hard time because I booked a vacation for me and my boyfriend, now fiance, during my custody time. But I agreed because of how serious this was. We live around 5 hours away from them, so I assumed he'd drive there, stay the night, then come back the next morning. But he was gone for almost a week. Then last Friday, the day after my kids went back to my ex, apparently his oldest niece, same sister's kid, maybe 16 or 17, called him and asked for help. According to my ex, the girl's stepdad made her be mom's full-time caretaker, taking care of her half-siblings, 3 toddlers, and do everything around the house. He asked me to take them again so he could pick up his nieces and arrange for his sister to be in some kind of care home or have a full-time carer. I asked how long this would take, and he said he didn't know and estimated that it would be around a week. I said no, because he refuses to take the kids during my custody time, and he screamed at me, saying this was a family emergency, called me a petty jerk, and said I'm a horrible mom. I still refused to take them, so he called my parents, explained the situation, and left the kids with them. Now, on top of my ex giving me crap, my parents are saying I should have taken my kids because this was an emergency. Am I the jerk for not taking my kids during my ex's custody time? You're the jerk. Those are your kids' aunt and cousins. And you won't even take care of your own kids so he can make accommodations for his nieces when their mother might not make it? Sickening. Your kids probably think you're the jerk too. I'd be surprised if you didn't ruin the relationship you had with them too. How could you think you're not the jerk? Even your parents told you as much. Reply: not to mention going on holiday with her boyfriend. I don't care if he's her fiance now or not. He was her boyfriend at the time. Is not the same as an awful life-changing emergency. Sounds like she prioritizes her partner over everything and everyone else. Reply: she has them 8 days a month. 8. and she booked a vacation during those days? He probably protested on their behalf more than his, or so I think. It's not like he was planning on a free weekend. She doesn't take her own kids on weekends. And they're teenagers. It's not like taking care of little kids. She's the jerk for sure. Not the jerk. I've been in the same boat before. Deadbeat ex expected me to watch the kids every time something came up. I brought it up in court and they shut that down real quick. Sorry, but I honestly don't care what's going on with your family. When they're on your time, I am not responsible for them. But they're your kids. Well, they're his too. So it's time he grow up and stop depending on me. I got a real man now, and my ex will never be half the man he is.
So much baby mama drama today. I love it.
Am I the jerk for making paying for a DNA test my hill to die on? I, female 23, am 36 weeks pregnant. I chose to keep the baby after her dad said he didn't want her and continued with pregnancy knowing I would be a single mom. He later contacts me, says he does want to be involved, but it's super wishy-washy, like sometimes he was in a good mood, otherwise he'd lash out. I believe people deserve grace, and that if he wants to be involved, I should allow him, no matter how much he has hurt me. He has made it explicitly clear to me that he does not want to formally pay child support. He's military and his contract ends in October. He will not be moving closer to baby. He will continue on with his life plans to go to college and would only see her maybe once a month. Again, I don't believe you get anywhere by forcing anyone to do anything, so I'm willing to work him into her life, keeping those things in mind. Now, I do know that it is best for the kids, especially in separate households, to have stability and least conflict as possible. So I've been trying to get him to talk about a custody agreement, parenting plan so we can discuss boundaries and expectations and stuff like that. I've been mostly ignored. Today, he finally got back to me and said he wanted a DNA test. I said no problem, but you won't be able to sign AOP or birth certificate until DNA results, and you'd have to initiate that whole process through the AGA office and would have zero rights or responsibilities until then. And that if that was the case, I wanted her to have my last name. I also sent him a link to a prenatal DNA test lab where you get the results in 3 days, but said he would have to pay and schedule the appointment. He said he at most would pay half. If I am claiming it's his kid, I should pay for it. He said at most he would pay half. If I'm claiming it's his kid, I should pay for it and schedule the appointment. I said no, absolutely not. I know he is the father, and to me, him being legally tied to her doesn't make any kind of difference. Am I the jerk for not backing down and paying for half of the DNA test? In my point of view, if he has not paid for anything to do with baby, and he really isn't planning on it in the future, from what I have gathered, and I'm tired of dealing with him, and would rather him not be involved at all. But maybe that's selfish to the baby. I don't know. The response has definitely helped me reframe my way of going into this. My goal is to be the best possible mother and support for my kid. I erroneously thought that by being as kind as possible to her father, male 23, my ex-boyfriend, it would help him be in her life and thus she wouldn't lack a father. Also, I already have spoken to 2 lawyers previously and planned on submitting a formal custody agreement right after her birth, but wanted to talk to him about the terms to make sure we both agreed to try and keep things as friendly as possible. I understand that this kind of person was only taking advantage of that. I will protect my baby from his indecisiveness and fight for her rights to child support and fight for full and sole conservatorship. If he wants more rights, he's simply going to have to work for them and prove he deserves them. And she will have my last name. Not the jerk, but your casual attitude may come back to bite you later. If he wants anything to do with this kid, you should have a formal agreement. You can choose whether or not to enforce it, but it may protect you in the future if he decides that he wants to be more involved in her life for some reason. Part of your agreement should be he pays for the DNA test. OP. I agree. That's why I think it's so important to talk about a parenting plan and custody agreement before she gets here. I plan on submitting one to the court system if he does end up getting the DNA test and signing AOP. I did want to be considerate and see if we could come up with compromises beforehand so that it would be something we both agreed on and wouldn't be too much of a legal battle. I just don't think that's realistic with his attitude. Everyone sucks here. You need a reality check. In your effort to come off as easygoing, you're hurting your kid. Those laws are in place for a reason. They protect you, him, and most of all, your kid. Good for you for setting a hard boundary and stick to your guns. Go through the proper channels. He wants a selfie kid. He wants a baby to parade around on Instagram and show what a good father he is, but none of the tough stuff. You will be the one up with this baby all night with ear infections. You will be the one dealing with financial difficulties when there's no formal agreement in place because you didn't want to force anything on him. You don't get to cherry pick which stuff you want to be involved in. Good fathers and mothers are praised for being such because they are willing to make the sacrifices and tough decisions. You're the jerk towards your child and yourself. You sound like a pathological people pleaser who's giving away all of your decisions and your power to some flaky jerk at the expense of your kid and yourself. You're being a doormat. I think you may have serious self-esteem issues and consider yourself to be unworthy and undeserving of anything from the man who knocked you up for the sheer audacity of getting pregnant. You don't even feel entitled to give your own name to your child you birth. This is truly baffling. My God, woman, wake up. You're about to be a mother. Get assertive to protect the life you're making. You either insist that this dude commits to being an emotionally and physically present father who pays support and gets actively involved, or you cut him completely out of your life. No last name, no rights, no visitation when he feels like it, and no access to the kid, ever. Right now, you are setting up your kid to develop an anxious attachment disorder, which occurs from having inconsistent caregivers in early childhood, and it's a tough burden to carry. Stop giving away your power to the man who doesn't respect or care for you, and get real. Boss excluded me from a meeting about my clients, ended up having to deal with a very irate customer. So as always, a little backstory to set the scene. I work organizing private travel for ultra-high net worth individuals, generally focusing on European travel. About a month ago, I handed in my 2-month notice as I'd found a new role elsewhere after 2.5 years of dealing with my narcissist manager's constant passive-aggressive needling and bullying. Quick introduction to the characters in this story. Narcissistic boss we shall call Napoleon. I'm sure you can make the connection there. Client we'll call Dingo. So as mentioned, a couple of weeks back, I handed in my 2-month notice to leave the company. One of the first things Napoleon asked me to do was to put together a full handover of my client list with a bit of an explanation of their likes and dislikes, regular routes, example margins for flights, etc., etc. As I'm moving to a completely different industry, this was absolutely fine and gave me something to do. This handover went unacknowledged for about 4 weeks while I wrapped my stuff up and spent a lot of time sitting around doing sod all. Wednesday, this week, Napoleon decides, right, let's go and decide who gets which of Read All About It 92's clients then. You don't need to come up, Read All About It 92. Stay here and man the phones. I had 3 flights that were already booked months ago that would be operating after I had officially left the company. So these were essentially free money towards targets for whoever gets to deal with them at the start of next year. Napoleon, being a narcissist and a greedy jerk, decides that the 2 flights with the biggest margin he'd take for himself and do over everyone else. However, had he had me in the meeting to discuss the clients, he would have known that I was in the middle of a fairly difficult discussion with client Dingo over a flight to a certain alpine resort at the end of December. Essentially, we had been told that there was no landing options for the requested airport, and they would have to use a different airport about 45 minutes drive further away. He chose the original one as his kids get carsick, so he wanted to cut down the drive time. I'd been going back and forth with the aircraft owners trying to find a solution, and while they were up in the meeting, eventually broke the bad news to Dingo, but advised that he would offer him money off a future flight, and therefore cutting our margin as an apology. Dingo did not like this and responded with a scathing email advising us of how awful this was and how he was considering canceling the flight and he'd think about the options that I provided him and get back to me later that day. Cue the malicious compliance. Napoleon comes down from the meeting and advises, "Oh, I'll be looking after Dingo and these other clients from now on for you." So I thought, brilliant. If he wants the margin and didn't want to bother to get into the background so he can deal with the fallout. So I send over an email to Dingo saying, "I'm so sorry for all the issues that you faced with us, and I understand how disappointed you are. Please note I have escalated this directly to my manager Napoleon, who will now be dealing with this all personally from this point forward." When Napoleon saw this, he responded, "What are you doing? You don't leave for another 2 weeks." To which I respond, "You asked me to hand things over and advised that you'd be dealing with Dingo, so I've handed over Dingo to you as you requested. Any information you need is in the handover I gave you a couple of weeks ago, as clearly you don't need any more information." Napoleon lost his crap a bit with me and then had to spend the next 2 days groveling to Dingo, dealing with a very difficult operator and knowing that if he had thought for a second, maybe it might be useful to have him up here to talk us through the clients, then he wouldn't have to deal with this. While I washed my hands of what was becoming a fairly stressful situation and went back to doing various pointless busy work as I work out my notice. Karen neighbor is running a business under my bedroom. My husband and I live in an upstairs 3-bedroom flat, and the flat below us is the same layout. The house has been for sale for a while, and recently a woman bought it. It turns out she doesn't have any kids, so I found it strange she bought a 3-bedroom house, but I soon found out it's because she runs a craft business from her home and needs 2 bedrooms to run it. The problem is, unfortunately, she has decided to use the main bedroom, which is below us, as her main craft room. At first, it was fine, as she hadn't fully moved in, but now it's driving me crazy. She's in that room almost all day, and I can hear her walking about and the faint noise of machines. I don't spend long in my bedroom during the day, but when I do go in it, it just annoys me, knowing that she's down there constantly. Like, why can't she have picked the smaller bedrooms, since she knows the kids are at school all day? She always stops using her embroidery and sewing machines by 7 p.m., but she's told me she can sit up until 10 p.m. some nights finishing off orders, which plays on my mind. I go to bed at 9 p.m., and I can't sleep for hours as I lie there listening for her every move. Just knowing she's awake and walking about drives me crazy, as I find it so selfish someone would buy a flat and work from home. My husband says he can barely hear a thing during the day, and I need to calm down. He also doesn't see the big deal about her using her house as she pleases. Yesterday, I finally had enough and went to her door. I told her how I was feeling about everything and how I can hear the faint noise of her machines. She apologized and invited me inside to show me her setup. All her machines are on some sort of an anti-vibration padding to stop as much noise as possible, so she claims the noise should be minimal and that you need to expect some noise from neighbors. I told her I don't make any noise, and that's when things took a turn, as she said she can hear my kids running around and jumping off furniture all evening, but she would never dream of complaining because it's just one of those things when you share a building with other people. I left before I said anything else I regretted, and I thought that was the end of it. But today, my husband came home from working overnight and asked if I had said anything to the lady downstairs, as she was very cold and blunt with him when he said hello. I told him what happened, and he said I'm a massive jerk. I've spoken to a couple of my friends who think I've handled this completely wrong, and I'm a bit of a jerk for it, but I don't see what else I could have done. You're the jerk. I find it so selfish that someone would buy a flat and work from home? What? She can do whatever she wants in her own home. Or would you rather she sat there in silence on the dole? Can we also acknowledge that OP doesn't even like the idea that the neighbor is awake and using their flat? I'm sorry, what? OP, if you have issues with the mere thought of people living in the space they pay for, maybe you should save up for a single-family home so that you aren't disturbed by people being alive around you. You're the jerk. Yes, a single, childless woman can buy as big of a house as she pleases. Yes, she can use the rooms however she wants, within the confines of any HOA rules and the law. Yes, your kids probably make far more noise than her machines. Have you considered getting anti-vibration padding for them? Yes, you have too much time on your hands if you're constantly obsessing about her crafting. You need to go downstairs and apologize to her, then ask for tips on picking up a hobby. You definitely need one, and she sounds like an expert. Not the jerk. Do you have an HOA or anyone you can report her to? As much as people talk crap about HOAs, when you know how to use them, they can really come in handy. Annoying neighbor mowing his lawn all hours of the day? Reported. Neighbors hoarding ugly broken down cars in their backyard? Reported. I know flats may be different, but I really hope you can report her to someone. Maybe try giving the management office a call. Also, I highly doubt she has the proper licensing to be running a business like this, so there are authorities to report that to as well. Chances are she isn't paying taxes properly either, so a call to the taxing authority might be a good idea. Does she have a business Facebook page you can get on to express your concerns? That's the thing about Facebook business pages. They are a great way to get back at someone. Trust me, I've wreaked havoc on more than a few myself. Ultimately, can people do whatever they want in their house? Sure, but once you're affecting my quality of life, it's time to make you regret it. And don't bother calling me a Karen. My name is Sharon, but I can definitely be a Karen when I need to.
Bruh, these Karens be trippin' though.
Her name's Sharon, not Karen.
Is there really a difference?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her neighbor downstairs? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for being ungrateful of the cake my boyfriend made me? I, 33 female, have been dating a man, Alex, 34 male, for almost 3 years. Alex has a 13-year-old daughter from a previous marriage that he has full custody of. When we met, Alex was doing very well. He made 6 figures, and he had a decent house in a fine neighborhood. I had a slightly lower paying job. Almost a year and a half ago, his job had to cut some employees, and he was one of them. He had to take on a job, and he earned much less than he had before. I moved into their house 5 months ago. Since I moved in, I've helped with a lot of the bills, usually half or more of them. Yesterday was my birthday. I wanted to celebrate at a nice restaurant near us. However, it was closed. There was another one a little closer to us, although it was more expensive. I suggested going there for my birthday to Alex, and he said that he couldn't afford to pay for dinner there, and if we went, we would need to split the bill. I was a little upset, but he said he would make something himself. The cake I wanted was, admittedly, somewhat expensive. I pointed it out to him, and he said again that he didn't think he could afford it with Christmas coming up, and we'd have to go half. I told him I wasn't paying for a cake for my own birthday, and he said he'd see what he could do. Well, yesterday came. He made dinner, and it was quite good, better than most meals we eat, although not as good as what it would have been at a restaurant. However, when he brought the cake out, it was just something he had made himself. He said he was sorry he couldn't afford the nicer cake, but he had made this one, and his daughter had helped. I pretended to enjoy it, but after, I told him that I was hoping for a slightly nicer cake. He said he had tried his best, and he couldn't spend the money he had set aside for bills on a cake. I guess his daughter heard, because now he's also saying that I made her upset after she helped make it. He keeps saying I should apologize to her and say that I really liked it. Am I the jerk?
Bruh!
You're the jerk. Wow, you sound conceited and unappreciative of what you have. I would consider a homemade cake and meal much more of a heartfelt birthday gift than someone spending over $200 on me at dinner. You lucked out with this guy, but be careful because it sounds like you don't realize it, and soon enough, he will end up with someone who does. You're the jerk. A 33-year-old complaining about a cake? When there is a responsible man prioritizing his bills, providing for his kid, and being an overall awesome guy? Sounds like you had no problem when Buddy was making 6 figures, but now that he's an average Joe, he's below you? Let this man go and sink your claws into the next walking bank account you find. You're the jerk. Either break up and date someone who can afford your tastes, pay for your crap yourself, or be quiet and grateful for what your partner tried to do for you. Those are the options. Instead, you rejected his admittedly very nice meal and the cake he baked for you and made his kid who tried to help make your birthday nice feel like crap. You're 33. Grow up and act like it. Not the jerk. Girl, you deserve so much better. My fiance and I have a clear agreement that if he ever falls on rough times, I'm out the door. You wouldn't stick with an employer who can't afford to treat you right, so why would you stay with a man who can't afford to? I know what I'm worth. If you want a girl like me, 100K followers on Instagram, 60K followers on TikTok, you're going to pay for it. Don't like it? I can replace you in a heartbeat with a man who will treat me like the queen that I am. Like Drake says, know your worth.
Why are some people so disgusting?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
Some of these stories legit make me upset, and I love it.
Am I the jerk for giving the PS5 my husband bought to my nephew? I'm a 35-year-old woman, and my husband is 37. I discovered the other day he had bought a PS5 as a gift for himself, but the thing is, he used my money to do so without my permission, using a portion of my emergency savings that he had access to, in case of, an emergency. Which I do not believe being able to get your hands on a new video game console classes as. This led to a huge argument, and I took the console away and reboxed it up. I debated on returning it to the shop for the money, but I know my sister has been struggling to find one for my 13-year-old nephew for over a year. So instead, I wrapped it up and took it around to hers and put it under the tree and quietly explained what it was and what had happened. My sister then gave me the money for it. My husband went ballistic, shouting and demanding I go get it back, which I of course refused to do, telling him, as it had been bought with my money, it was my choice what happened to it. He is now sulking and refusing to talk to me and acting like a huge baby. Edit. For anyone curious about our money situation and why I'm so angry, we each put half our salary into a communal family fund for the house, bills, groceries, etc. The other half is ours to play with as we want. My husband always blows through his and never saves a penny. Half of my expendable money goes into savings for emergencies as I'm more realistic. Second edit, stating here because of comments. He refused to pay me back as it was an emergency. Third edit, I've emptied the emergency account that he has access to and put it all in my personal account that he does not have access to, including the money I got from my sister for the PS5. Not the jerk. No idea how any sane person can read this story and think, yep, dude was 100% in the right. On the flip side, I have no idea how anyone can stay with someone so incompetently stupid as OP's husband. I get that certain factors play a role in not just instantly divorcing or dumping someone, divorcing being a hassle, kids, etc. But good lord, learn to value and respect yourself. Someone nearing 40 with no ability to save money, steal money for a game console, and categorically refuse to admit fault or apologize deserves no charity. Seriously though, how do people like OP's husband get people to marry and stay with them? I totally get that some partners flip a switch after marriage and become monsters, but there are daily posts on here of people with 6 months into a relationship describing just massive red flags about their partner and still wondering if they are a jerk or not. We need more education in our lives about loving ourselves and not settling with jerks. If you've been with someone for 7 years and they've been lazy and selfish the whole time, nothing is going to change in the future. Reply, man, what's the deal with all these man boys and their gaming? It's a hobby? Not everyone has to go fishing, hunting, hiking, camping, etc. Reply, I just keep seeing all these threads about men neglecting their wives and families, taking money from savings, and more often than not, it's video game related. I'm not saying men who don't play games aren't guilty of those things too, but it seems like there's an extra degree of immaturity in the stories where the man is a gamer. Reply, and then other gamers always come in to defend them. My marriage was almost ruined over gaming, and I had so many people tell me that I can't handle being with a gamer. All my exes were gamers, and I was with my gamer husband for 5 years before I got fed up with his behavior. He even realized it was out of control and got his crap together. He still has his hobby, and we're both happy. I can't stand the type of gamers who justify ruining people's lives over a hobby. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her gamer husband? Please let us know.
He's not a true gamer unless his diet consists mainly of Mountain Dew and Doritos. For the Alliance.
Am I the jerk for telling my husband that if he wants his spoiled brat of a daughter to come over for Christmas, he can cook? My husband, Rob, and I married later in life, and each have one daughter from a previous relationship. I'm going to refer to my stepdaughter as Maggie. To be 100% honest, I would not have even considered marrying Rob if Maggie had been under 18. She's extremely difficult. I blame Rob and his ex for a lot of it, but some of it seems beyond anyone's control. She's never worked a day in her life. She was never held accountable for being a mean girl in school, and even as an adult, she throws tantrums. I have seen her throw herself to the ground, cry until she can't breathe. Her husband responds by treating her like an actual toddler, tickling, rocking. It's very weird. She's now 35 and has 2 kids, but they're always with the nanny, and she just seems unaware of her privilege. She is unhealthily obsessed with her husband and calls Rob during the day, despite him still working full-time, and demands attention because she just doesn't know what to do with herself when her husband is at work. I'm not trying to be some wicked stepmother, but this woman is annoying. Last Christmas, I made her a homemade sweater and she loved it. She picked the colors and design, and she found out my daughter had the same one in a different color and cried and accused me of wanting to humiliate her. She constantly is smug about what her husband buys her and tries to imply that my daughter is poor, despite my son-in-law making excellent money. When anyone else is getting attention, she bounces around, clings to her husband, or causes some scene to put the attention back on her. In the past, when I asked her to help me in the kitchen, she threw a fit, despite liking to cook, because she didn't want to be in the kitchen with me, my daughter, my sister, and my niece, because she thinks we all talk crap about her, which I think really translates to, she made a fool of herself trying to upstage my daughter at her wedding, and my family witnessed that. Anyway, she normally does Christmas at her house. I don't go because I want to spend Christmas with my daughter, and because Maggie is a lot. Maggie isn't hosting this year because of a minor surgery, but she doesn't want to do all that cooking, which is fine. but Rob wants me to host this year and invite both of our daughters, and he cites that my daughter just had a baby and shouldn't have to cook either. I was going to go to her house and cook. I said I don't really feel like spending Christmas with Maggie because of her behavior, and my daughter should relax, which is impossible with Maggie bouncing off the walls and talking a mile a minute. He accused me of just not liking his daughter. I said if he wants to host Maggie and her husband, he can cook. He can't, and I will go to my daughters like planned. He thinks I'm being unfair because it is Christmas and she is his only blood family, and he feels I would be angry if he did the same with my daughter. Edit for all the people asking what Maggie did at the wedding. She wore a very over-the-top dress which was so beaded and sparkly even she was uncomfortable at some point due to it being scratchy, and made a joke how my daughter isn't in love and only like 1% of people can actually experience love and we aren't deep enough. She threw a fit about that. She was going to pass out because it was hot and demanded food. It was kind of warm, but she has no health issues that should make it so she needs cake that moment or she will get hurt. She complained about the food, complained that my daughter was getting attention, her husband got drunk and was kissing all over her, and she ended the night by loudly announcing that her parents didn't love her enough. Not the jerk. If it were me, I'd go to my daughter's house and cook. Sorry, honey, I have plans because my daughter just had a baby, and I don't want her to have to travel or be around a bunch of people with a newborn. Period. End of story. He would be welcome to either come with me or he could go to his own daughter's house. And if his daughter is so rich, then she can afford to hire someone to cook their Christmas dinner. I'd send a lovely gift with him and a beautiful daughter-in-law card with it so she couldn't say mean things about me. Not that it would stop her, but this is what I would do. Enjoy your Christmas with your daughter and your new grandbaby. Not the jerk. Rob's poor parenting enabled Maggie's unacceptable behavior. Maggie sounds like she is very spoiled and entitled, but she might also have a mental illness that was never addressed. Your response is appropriate. Considering Maggie is a fully grown woman, you don't need to have her in your life. I think you and Rob need to go for counseling, and you should go if he refuses. If this doesn't work out, it's time to consider leaving him. Not the jerk. I absolutely can't believe the amount of "Am I the jerk" posts around the holidays that center around "My husband is upset that I won't cook because of blah blah blah." Then he can cook. Google it. Literally, open your phone or laptop and watch a tutorial. It is absolutely nuts how many guys lose their minds the minute their wifey won't cook for them. Anytime someone acts entitled to someone else's time and effort, I'm inclined to say not the jerk, no matter what the reason is, even if it's super petty, simply because it's so mind-numbingly dumb that these people haven't bothered to learn a basic life skill. Everyone sucks here. Maybe this will be an unpopular opinion, but it sounds like you're both the jerks. There are quite a few little digs in this little story that tells me that you probably aren't 100% the innocent party in all of this. By the way you are describing your interactions to everyone here, I have absolutely no doubt that you and your family talk crap behind her back. She sounds like a petulant child and sounds like she probably needs a good amount of therapy for her issues, but you sound like a judgmental whiner, even though you are implying that you are the reasonable adult in the picture. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Maggie? Please let us know. I'll cut down your hours so you'll be forced to quit. Yes, please. This happened almost 10 years ago. I was teaching IT in a professional school and was getting near 2 years of employment. In my country at the time, once you completed 1 year at a company, you had the right to take 1 month of paid vacations, but the employer could hold it till right before your second mandatory vacation period came along. So the school had no choice but to arrange everything for my leave of absence. Problem was, they had no one to put in my place during said month. When the topic came up, I gladly offered to help them hire someone and even train this person before taking my leave. All would go well if there wasn't some drama getting set up in the background. A few months back, our teaching manager had quit in a dramatic way. She was having a relationship with a student, which was heavily against school's policies. And to make it even worse, the student in question was my daughter. I was against it, but kept quiet because my daughter asked me to and said she was happy. Much later, I found out it was a horrible relationship and blamed myself for not giving voice to my concerns when it was time, but this is a story for another day and probably another sub. So she decided to quit as a way to not get fired once higher-ups found out about the affair. We kept in touch, mostly because of my daughter, but the friendship we once had was affected permanently. Unfortunately, this wasn't the perception of school's managers. Gossip went around about how I wasn't to be trusted because of my connection to the former manager, but none of it reached my ears because I simply never engaged in this kind of talk and simply kept it to myself. The school eventually hired a former teacher to fill the vacant position in the teaching department, and at the time, I had no clue why they had not offered me the job. The new manager was a friend of mine and told me they offered him the job instead of me because higher managers had the habit of listening to the gossip, and that the CEO was actually looking for grounds to legally firing me. According to local labor laws, if he didn't have a valid reason for this, he would have to pay a huge fine. But the new manager told me he was fighting for me. That upset me. I just told him to stop bothering. If the boss tells you again that he wants me gone, do not disagree with him. I did everything they asked me about hiring a substitute, knowing that he would be my permanent replacement, but I was adamant in not giving them any reason to fire me without full compensation. About a week before my leave ended, I called the teaching manager and asked them about my return to work. He asked me to start with a free class. The school offered free classes monthly to attract new students, and that we would have a meeting with the CEO afterwards to arrange everything about my return. I asked him to send me an email with all the details of this class, and he hesitated before complying. The email I got specified a different schedule from what we discussed on the phone. Huh? I had 4 free classes that day before meeting the manager and the CEO. Each one went smoother than the previous. When the time of the meeting came, they still didn't have any reason to fire me. The CEO started citing a bunch of complaints they supposedly received about my behavior while in class for the past 2 years, but did not provide any proof of it. He then started saying how the results of the new teacher were through the roof and that they should have hired him instead of me much sooner. The whole thing was very confrontational and aggressive and clearly designed to provoke some kind of violent response from me. I kept calm and was smiling the whole time. When he saw the strategy didn't pan out, he said he was simply giving my regular classes to the new guy and keeping me with just the free classes, which in his mind would severely cut down my earnings and I would feel forced to quit. Since I had read a lot about labor laws during vacations, cue the malicious compliance. Wait, so I get to keep my current earnings and work 1 day a week? Well, sign me up. Boss, of course you would only be paid for the free classes. Me, so do I have a saying in keeping teaching regular classes? No, as I was saying, the new teacher is really loved by the students, and, well, if dropping the regular classes are not my own choice and I have no way to prevent it, then according to the law, you have to keep paying me exactly the same amount as before, even if, by your own decision, I'll be here just 4 days each month. This isn't how it works. But it is, and you can, of course, disagree. And you can choose to pay me less if you want to. But what you cannot do is fire me with just cause when I sue you because of it. What if I just fire you right now? That would mostly be acceptable. Then you're fired. Thank you very much. So I was fired not only with full severage, but I actually had to go back there a week later to pick up even more money because the guy forgot to give me a mandatory raise issued by the teachers union while I worked there. So if he didn't pay the difference retroactively, he would be sued and probably criminally charged. We did everything with a firm handshake, and almost 10 years later, I'm back at the same company, now as the teaching manager. Reply: my boss told me early on in my employment he never fires employees. He simply cuts their hours. I told him I wanted about 15 hours per week because I have another job. Well, he saw how competent I am and scheduled me more and more hours. I mentioned it's too many hours, and he told me he's struggling trying to find more employees, so I'll just have to deal with it for the time being. I knew this was untrue. I saw the applications, I saw the interviews. He just didn't want to hire anybody else. My malicious compliance. I started petty arguments with him, started showing up a few minutes late, stopped being friendly with him. Sure enough, he cut my hours. Fortunately, my punishment cut my hours back to exactly how many hours I initially wanted. Reply: a few years ago, I was presented with a choice: a performance improvement plan with goals that were completely unachievable, or to quit with 2 weeks severance. They presented this to me after lunch and offered to let me go home with pay for the rest of the day to think it over. I surprised them by refusing to go home and refusing to quit. I made it clear that I thought the performance improvement plan was unachievable, but since they were only offering 2 options, I was choosing the plan. They let me go 3 days trying to meet the plan goals before they gave in and fired me. They gave me the severance anyway because I signed an agreement not to sue. Wouldn't have been worth the expense because they believed they had grounds to fire me for cause. I filed for unemployment. Employer denied. I appealed and won. Not only did I get severance, but 5 months of unemployment and severance. They now have an official record with the state of having tried to wrongfully deny unemployment. When I checked about 6 months later, the manager who tried to pull this didn't work at that company anymore. Am I the jerk for being honest with my ex-husband's girlfriend? I was married for 3 years. We divorced 2.5 years ago. The marriage was bad. I was stupid. I ignored a lot of warning signs because I was naive. I got my son out of it, but I also know that might not have been a great thing for my son. My ex was a widower with kids when we met. He seemed ready, seemed like he wanted to date, but there were signs that I missed or ignored or just was too dumb to do something about. I'm not sure. He talked about his wife all the time, had her photos and their wedding photos everywhere. Everyone loved and adored her, and she was this saint in the family, someone who was perfect in every single way, and nobody would ever be as good as her. His kids were especially unhappy about me, but nobody treated me well when I look back. I was compared to his wife, made to feel like I was trying to steal from her, made to feel like I was just unimportant in general. It all unraveled when I became pregnant, and he revealed to me that he never loved or had wanted to be with me, let alone marry me, and he didn't want our baby. His kids sent me off with a big "forget you," saying my son would never be part of the family, and they were right. Someone must have mentioned me to the new girlfriend because she reached out and asked me to be honest about why we broke up and why he wasn't involved. I told her my story and what had happened. She confessed to me that his kids would taunt her, even the one who was in college, that they made her know she would never be accepted or wanted, and he was pressured to be with her. After talking to her, some of his family found me on Facebook and told me it was not my place to tell her anything, and I ruined their relationship because she left him. They said I should leave them alone since they leave me and my son alone. Are they right? Am I in the wrong here? Not the jerk. You saved this woman from being treated the way you were, and that makes you a hero in my book. Block his family. They don't need to be able to contact you. Reply: I disagree a little. OP didn't save the new girlfriend. The new girlfriend had a reason to gather info, did that, and saved herself. OP was kind enough to be honest, yes, and I'm sure she was. Thank you, OP. That didn't change the new girlfriend's mind though, and OP is not accountable for the fallout in any way. Give my kid your PS5 or you've ruined his Christmas. So the other day, I, 30 male, got lucky and managed to get hold of a PS5, which are like gold dust in the UK at the moment. Work has been ridiculous this year, and my PS4 broke a few months back. To say I'm hyped for it and some holiday downtime is an understatement. The console finally arrived the other day and was left with my neighbor. I knocked on the door, thanked them for taking the parcel, and exchanged some pleasantries. When she casually asked if it was anything nice, I told her it was a PS5. We had the usual small talk, and I went back inside, thinking nothing of it. Later, we had a knock on the door from her husband, who's about 38. He said his wife had mentioned I'd gotten a PS5 and they wanted one for their 7-year-old son. It was all his son wanted this year, and it's been a tough year for his son as he's not been able to see his friends much. So, would I consider selling it to them for what I bought it for? I said I understood, but I really didn't want to sell it as I was looking forward to playing it. That's when things got a bit weird. He huffed a little and said Christmas should be about kids, and I should really consider how hard it's been for them, and offered me an extra £50. I said I wouldn't be selling it for any price. I wasn't looking to make money on it, I just really wanted to play it. He left, but said he hoped I'd reconsider as, "You and I are a bit old for video games anyway," and walked off. End of story, I thought. The next day, he comes over again, this time with his son. He said his son really wanted to see the PS5 he had heard about. The boy then said to me that's what he really wanted for Christmas and hoped Santa would get him one. I replied that hopefully he would, but it's really busy for him this year, so he might have to wait a little longer for it. But if not, I'm sure he'd get something nice instead. Another day passes, and my fiance said they had posted something weird on social media about, there's a neighborhood group, how they had thought 2020 would have made people less selfish and more giving. But they were disappointed in their neighborhood, which had forgotten community spirit, and how people should be more thoughtful towards the kids in the streets, given how much they've all suffered this year. Off the back of it, my fiance asked if I should sell them the console, just to keep the peace. Later in the day, they came around again to tell me that I had promised their son he'd be getting a PS5 for Christmas, and now it would be ruined if he didn't get one. She said that I am an adult and should be thinking of kids at Christmas, not acting like one playing video games, and that I was being unbelievably selfish and cruel. He added that he didn't know why we could enjoy Christmas knowing we were horrible people that had ruined a 7-year-old's Christmas. Now, I've also heard from some people on the street that they've been talking crap about us to people, though most neighbors are just staying out of it, but we're definitely getting some daggers from the mums who lunch crew. We live in a super nice neighborhood, but it's firmly middle class, lots of private school kids called Hattie and Sebastian, etc. We're definitely the youngest on the street and the weird childless couple, which I don't think PS5 Gate is helping with. My fiance just wants to sell it to them to end it, but I'm still trying to hold firm. Honestly, I feel like I'm losing my mind at this point. Karen loses it over the Baby Yoda socks I bought her for Christmas. For Secret Santa, I got Sarah, who put down a bunch of books that she wanted, as well as other things like socks, tea, and candy. I was a little disappointed, to be honest, because I really like to shop for people and give really cool gifts, and these were just a bunch of blah things. When I looked up all the books to get her, I found out that they were all romance novels. I felt kinda cringe buying her romance novels, so I looked at the common themes and found a really good fantasy novel to buy her instead, called Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. It has a romance in it too. I figure if she likes to read, then she'd be happy to broaden her horizons and branch out. I also got her some Baby Yoda socks to go along with it, because who doesn't like Baby Yoda? And some Bigelow tea that looked good. We did the exchange this morning, and she looked visibly confused when she opened hers. She changed her face to be surprised/happy, but this really bothered me. In the break room later, I heard her talking and complaining that she didn't get why someone got her these things. The other person said they were probably upset they got a woman instead of a man, which I thought was rude. I'm a woman too. I'm just not the pumpkin spice latte and Hallmark kind. Then after, I saw her give the socks to someone else, saying they could have them for their kid. I was honestly really bothered by this. I put thought and effort into a gift. Am I the jerk for getting her something to branch out of the humdrum romance genre and Baby Yoda socks? I thought everyone liked Baby Yoda. Yes, you're the jerk. But you will probably never understand why, so there's not much point in this. Still, I'm going to say it anyway. What the heck is your problem? Why do you feel it's your job to shame people for what they like? She literally put what she wanted on a sheet of paper, but you decided you knew better. Of course she was disappointed. The whole point of putting things you like down when doing these things is so people can receive something they actually want, instead of some dumb stuff that they don't even want. Congratulations on wasting your money and disappointing someone for no reason. Maybe next time stop being condescending and let people enjoy things, or don't participate. You're the jerk. You didn't put in time and effort for a gift for this woman. You put in time and effort for a gift for you. She told you her likes. You read them, judged them, and decided you needed to change her. Honestly, your comment about not being a pumpkin spice latte and Hallmark kind of woman screams pick-me energy. You're not better than her for having different interests. Spend less time judging your coworkers next time, and instead, listen to what they tell you they like. Gift giving should be catered to the gift recipient, not the giver. Not the jerk. She should have just been grateful. If you got her a can of beans or something, then I would understand. But when someone doesn't appreciate Baby Yoda socks, it speaks volumes about who they are as a person. I myself am an avid Star Wars fan, but know plenty of people who aren't exactly fans, but still love Baby Yoda. Why do they love him? Because he's super adorable. Again, your coworker is probably not a nice person at all from the sounds of it. To be honest, she sounds insufferable. If my Secret Santa got me Baby Yoda socks, we'd be instant besties. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her coworker? Please let us know.
If I hear the words Baby Yoda one more time.
My principal tried to get me fired, so I got her fired from the district. I was in my mid-20s, fresh out of grad school and ready to start my teaching career. I got a job at a Title I elementary school near my home teaching art, and I was super excited that I could walk to work. However, I was so far into La La Land that I didn't notice any of the warning signs. Warning sign number 1. It was a week before school started, and I had called and emailed the school office staff and my principal to ask about getting my keys and a badge so I can start seeing what I needed to do to get ready for the school year. No response and no answer from either. So I called the district office and asked when and where I could pick up my keys and badge. 2 days before school starts, I get an email from my admin that I should have been more patient and not have contacted the main office about my keys and a badge. I finally got everything and was able to get into my room and was horrified with how much I had to get done. Apparently, they had used my room as storage, so it was loaded with tables and desks stacked on top of each other, 8 filing cabinets, and well over 100 chairs stacked all around the room. I managed to clean out the space with help from my awesome custodian. Shout out to all custodians who are the secret backbones in helping teachers get ready for the school year. Hurdle number 1 finished. Warning sign number 2. It's now the day of classes starting, and I haven't been informed of what the schedules are, as in which days I see certain classes and when. So I email my principal again, asking what the schedule looks like and if there is a digital document that I can print out. I get an email back a few minutes later telling me to stop pressuring and bullying her. I replied, sorry if I was making her feel that way, but it would be nice to know what classes I had and when. This leads to warning sign number 3. It's 8:10 a.m., not 10 minutes after school started, and I finally get my schedule, only to find out that I have 2 classes at the same time. Note, my school isn't huge, but we still had 14 classes serving kinder through 6th graders, so I was having at least 46 kids in one classroom by myself. Moreover, I had 7 45-minute periods a day and saw every class every day of the week, with only a 30-minute lunch. My lunch was when I was on lunch duty. I asked my principal if there was any way we could adjust the schedule so I had time to plan and get the classroom ready for the next class and wouldn't lose instruction time getting things ready as the new class was coming in. I got yelled at by her with a class waiting outside saying it was my first year teaching and I didn't know what I needed and needed to just deal with it. Well, I decided not to just deal with it, and I read the teacher's contract for the district. Come to find out, we had a section about classroom size. It stipulated that if you had a class over 30 students, you get to have an educational assistant to help you with the class. I brought this up with my principal after a month and a half of struggling and was, you guessed it, denied and told that there was no money in the budget and I would have to make do without it or quit. Mind you, I am stubborn and determined to make things work with what little I have, but things were rough. In order to prep and plan everything for the next day, make meaningful grades, keep up with referrals, and keep in contact with families, I was having to be at the school from 6 a.m. when the morning custodian arrived till 9 p.m. when the night janitor was leaving on weekdays, and then also use my weekend time to continue to plan and grade. When it came time for my first teacher evaluation, I was dreading it. However, I got all satisfactory marks from my principal. I was shocked. Little did I know this was a plan she had all along. A few more weeks pass, and I've had it. I talk with our union about the double classes and say it's not sustainable, and a classroom my size can't safely fit more than 30 students, let alone 46 students, and they said they would handle it. And another few weeks go by and nothing. It's now the week of Thanksgiving and conferences are over, and I get to not worry about anything for 2 days. So I decided to go to a potluck dinner with some old friends of mine. So here's the best part, and maybe the part that saved my career and even maybe my sanity. I was talking with an old acquaintance and his new husband about what teaching job I landed and how the school year was going. I let it slip that even though my students were amazing and had such creative minds, it's frustrating to me that I don't have the time to give to them that they deserve, and with 2 classes at once, it's hard to get around to everyone in the class in just 45 minutes. I noticed the husband raise his eyebrow and ask me what school I worked at, so I told him, what harm could it do? Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, little did I know I was talking with my principal supervisor. I found out the next Monday when my admin stormed into my room at 8:05 to scream and yell at me, threatening to fire me and make sure I never work in education again. I was shocked and confused at the time. However, later that week at our staff meeting, we talk about a change in the schedule and how only 1 class would be in my class at a time for an hour now, and I would only see them twice a week instead of all 5 days. It was magical. The kids were happier. I was calmed, was able to help each individual student if they needed it, and was able to plan enough throughout the day so I could leave at 4 p.m. Sad to say, my happiness didn't last forever. I noticed my principal stalking my room and coming in non-stop to observe me. It was awkward. I also had a few of my very extroverted students come in quiet and unable to focus on work. But when I asked them if everything was okay, they would burst into tears and say, "I don't want you to go." Being confused, my response was always, "Oh, don't worry, I have absolutely no intentions of going anywhere. You are all the best students a teacher could ever ask for," which would cheer them up for a while, but then they would come in next week, be upset again. It all clicked when the day before we left for Christmas break, my principal came into my room with one of her minions, who was our building union representative, to tell me I was being put on a teacher support plan. This plan was to evaluate whether or not my contract with the district would be up for renewal at the end of the school year. I was shocked, and my union rep just laughed and walked away giggling with our admin. I felt sick and unable to feel any emotion. It wasn't until I got home and read what this plan detailed was I seen red. I had hit my breaking point. This is when I started to formulate a plan of revenge. Some things to note. Our principal liked to come into school whenever they felt like it. She would be anywhere from 7:45 a.m., our actual contract hours, to as late as 9:30 a.m. She once showed up at noon without telling anyone. I also knew that she had kept renewing a certain after-school care contractor that wasn't free to families, but they got money from district to offer it for free. I also knew that this person running the after-school care was dating and living with our principal. So during winter break, my acquaintance and his husband called and asked if I was free to get drinks over the holidays. I love a good cocktail, and I needed one. When we met up, I wanted to talk about anything other than school stuff. I just wanted to keep my mind off of school drama. But the new husband brought up if things were better after he had talked about the double classes. That was when I found out that he was her boss. I asked, "What do you mean? You talked to my principal? How do you know her?" New husband, "Oh, you didn't know? I'm the supervising administrator for that cohort of schools." My jaw dropped and I started to hyperventilate. The husband was startled and asked what was wrong. So I told him. I told him everything. How she yelled and threatened to get me fired. How she put me on this support plan and how she just kept observing my class without notifying me. His face went from a concerned look to surprised Pikachu face to red with anger. He told me, "I really always had a bad vibe from her and always wondered why there were always so many new teachers at that school every year. What else can you tell me about what's going on?" I hesitated to tell him everything, but my acquaintance told me not to worry. He has seen this look before and that he was on my side. So I told him everything. They both just sat there awestruck, unable to speak about what they were hearing. Anyway, after break is over, I'm dreading coming back to my class, but I don't want to miss seeing my students, so I push on. I'm walking in the hall to my mailbox and I see a few of my students that had cried and told me that they didn't want me to leave. They ran up and gave me the biggest, longest hug ever, saying, "You're here, you're here." Me, "Of course I am. I wouldn't leave the best students ever, now would I?" Students, "But principal said that you were going to leave us because you didn't want to be here, and we should give you trouble before you left." Me, trying to hold my rage. "Oh, maybe she's talking about how I was leaving to visit family over the break. No need to worry, I'm still here." Yes, y'all, this wretched person tried to purposely make kids misbehave in my class to write me up for not having good rapport with my students. I was beyond livid. So next time I have class with that student, I asked them if they could make a comic book out of the conversation they had with my principal when she told them that I was leaving, and make an ending he wanted. Phase 1 started. Phase 2. I contacted my boss's boss and told him, per my contract, I wanted another admin to accompany my principal's teacher support observations, and I wanted it to be him. He said absolutely, but not to tell my principal just yet. The first day of my observation comes, and she walks in without a notebook or anything to take any sort of notes, looking proud of herself like she's about to get away with firing me. She is shocked and confused when her boss walks in with a laptop and sits next to her and starts typing notes about how I'm doing. She stumbles around and comes to ask me for a notepad to take notes, and I tell her I don't have an extra notepad, but I do have some poster paper. We were making a movie poster of a movie we would star in to go with our comic books, and that I hope you can be better prepared next observation as to not disrupt my class and take time away from their institutional time. Her boss just smirked. Phase 3. I was now calling my new best friend, her boss's boss, whenever she was late getting to school, and he would do a random stop by if he was close. So he was able to document that she was not showing up to work on time and not submitted the paperwork to have it be taken out of her leave minutes. Overall, we get her at least 2 times a week for a solid month. I think he even asked someone from HR to come to our school to see for herself at 9 a.m. and she still wasn't even there. Now time for phase 4, which was my favorite one, getting the parents on board. I first started talking to parents that seemed to always be late picking up their students. I would chat about it, and they said it was hard to get there on time and they often had to leave early. And when I told them about our aftercare, they would tell me that it cost too much for them. However, I would inform them that since we are a Title I school, that after-school care was free and paid for by the district, and gave her a nifty flyer I made up with the website to fill out the forms and which ones to fill out. This made word spread around to parents paying the contractors directly that it was supposed to be free. And boy, was that a fun PTA meeting to go to. I also made sure the principal knew it was me that informed the parents about that free after-school care program. After this, there were countless investigations at our school, with head administration from the central office stopping by our school, auditors, and our union finally got involved and tried to play the hero/victims of this incident. The outcome. The second half of the year was very chill. My new best friend made sure that my teacher support plan was taken off my teaching record, and my principal was not allowed to do my second term evaluations, nor was she allowed to do any informal observations. The after-school care contractor was fired and taken over by one recommended by the district, and my students were making amazing strides in their posters and comics. At the end of the year, when we were getting our assignments, jobs for next year, my principal made one last attempt to get me to leave and told me our budget doesn't have the funds for an art teacher next year and that I might want to seek employment elsewhere. I laughed in her face and said, "Nice try. My position is paid for by the state bond and isn't affected by your budget from the district. If there isn't anything else, I'll be leaving now," and walked out. I could hear her slam her desk and start losing it as I closed the door. At the end of the year, I had my one student share his comic book about how the principal told him to give me trouble in class at our school's talent show, leaving the already ticked off parents more ticked that an adult would tell a kid to act in such a way. I even think she had a shoe thrown at her when she ran on stage to stop him from finishing the comic. To the surprise of no one, the last day of school, she announced on the intercoms after students had left that she would be resigning from our school to move to a different position where she was needed and that she would miss almost all of us. I came to find out after stalking her on LinkedIn 2 years later that she had to get a job out of the district an hour drive away to get another admin job, but only stayed for a year and then had to step down to teaching English at a different school in another district the next year. And for those of you wondering how my student's comic book ended, well, the art hero rallied the students against the angry principal to make her see the errors of her ways. But the angry principal could not become happy, so she left, and the power of happiness filled the school once again. Finn. Mod reply. This post has been reapproved. Just as a reminder, do not call posts fake without evidence. OP is an art teacher. Last I checked, that isn't a profession with a profound focus on grammar. I've met plenty of people with college-level educations with terrible grammar and syntax. Your education level does not equal your ability to speak. Plus, we would be assuming OP's primary language is English. They may be from a different country doing their best to use the language. I took this stuff into consideration before approving and determined the post was feasibly possible and met the requirements for pro-revenge. If you have further complaints, please utilize the report feature and remember to remain professional in the comments. Violations may result in a ban. Reply. 2 hours in and already deleted their account. Juicy. Reply. They had me until the kid's fake acting of, "But the principal told us to do this," like some old cheesy Adam Sandler movie. Reply. They lost me on the second paragraph with all the typos, terrible grammar, and just random words where they didn't belong. It only got worse. Sadly, if it had been written at the level I would expect from someone with a master's degree, I would have believed it. Or if they had put a caveat that they weren't a native English speaker and this happened in another country. A lot of the wonkiness seems ESL. Am I the jerk for not believing my daughter's knee was hurting? I have a 15-year-old daughter and my husband is currently out of town. I have a lot of projects that need to be done in my yard and I really needed her help. On Friday, she told me her knee was hurting after her run and she was limping. I told her, "It's funny how your body always seems to malfunction when I need your help. You can just stay in bed all day if you want." Because it's true. She has a history of feigning ailments in order to get out of doing things she doesn't want to do. She hasn't done it much since she was around 9, but I still have trouble trusting her when she says something is wrong. She said she would help me, and I told her we could take her to an emergency room if her knee still hurt by the time the yard work was done. We worked the whole weekend, and she complained a lot, but I was almost certain that she would magically be better by the end of the weekend. This morning, though, she said her knee was hurting badly and she could barely walk, so I took her to the emergency room. It turns out she sprained her knee. I had told her to tell them that it only started hurting today, but she said it started hurting Friday, and I was questioned. Fortunately, nothing bad happened, but they said that due to how much she's had to use her knee after it was injured, it will take longer to recover. I decided to keep her home from school today because I don't necessarily want her telling people that I had her doing yard work when she told me her knee hurt. They wouldn't be getting the full story or context, and she has a tendency to exaggerate when I do something wrong. I do feel slightly guilty, but I told her that this wouldn't have gotten to the point it did had she not had this history of lying. She is upset with me. She told me that she was in terrible pain all weekend and that she couldn't believe I didn't trust her. She doesn't seem very interested in talking to me, but I feel like this is partially her fault for creating a situation in which I couldn't trust her. Am I the jerk for not wanting to apologize? You're the jerk 1,000,000%. The full story she'd be telling is that you made a crappy assumption about her, forced her to go an entire weekend without necessary medical care, and that you tried to get her to lie to cover up your negligence. All because when she was a literal kid 6 years ago, she had issues with lying. Yeah, I can see why you don't want that getting out. ETA. Also, you suck for pretending to be so morally outraged at your daughter lying to you in years past, which is, actually pretty developmentally normal for kids to do. But then asking her to lie for you to the doctors. Gross. Clearly, you're fine with it when it benefits. You're the jerk, and you sound like a terrible parent. You didn't believe your 15-year-old daughter because at age 9, so 6 years ago, she faked ailments to get out of things. You didn't trust your teenager when they were telling you they were injured and in pain because they exhibited what many consider a normal and harmless childhood behavior at age 9. I thought it was common sense that unless there's a reason to believe otherwise, healthy, emotionally well-developed kids grow out of this behavior with age. Apparently, this wasn't common sense to you. Even though she was in pain, she still helped you all weekend, and you just ignored her constantly expressing the pain she was in. What parent does that? What kind of elaborate ruse do you think your 15-year-old was up to here? You wanted her to lie to ER doctors about when her pain started to make yourself look less negligent, which you are, by the way, massively negligent. Then you kept her home from school so she wouldn't tell any of her friends the situation and make you look bad. Now your smug self thinks you don't owe your daughter an apology for forcing her to do physical labor while injured, worsening her injury, and then telling her to lie to the doctors, school teachers, and friends about what happened to disguise your blatant and flagrant mistreatment. Your behavior is appalling, and get ready for your daughter to go no contact with you for the rest of her life the second she turns 18. My parents gave away my childhood dog. I'll start out from the beginning. When I was very young, I don't exactly remember when, we got a dog. That dog grew up with me. I'd cry with him, I'd hug him, I'd spend time with him, play fetch, everything. He knew when I wanted support, he knew when to leave me alone, and he was a very good boy. He had a history of ear infections. He had floppy ears that we took good care of. Even being young, I knew this and took care of his ears and made sure he was okay. About 2 years before we moved out of my childhood house, which had ample yard space for him, my parents got another dog for my father. This became my father's dog. Still to this day, does not really like anyone but him. My dog was a large dog as well that needed yard space and such for reference. Fast forward to when I'm 13 or so. My dog, Alex, changed for privacy, is about 7 or 8 years old. My parents decided to downsize a bit and move since my brother had left. We go through places, and I am adamant we find a place that can support my dog, Alex. They decide upon a place that's rent agreement says 1 dog and hardly has space for Alex. I beg and plead with them to find a place that can support him, but they say no. They say the house that we were at was too expensive and they didn't think I'd take Alex on walks, despite me promising to. Their compromise was giving him to my aunt, who had a farm. They promised me he'd love it. I yelled and screamed for days until finally saying yes because they said we'd visit. We move, he gets rehomed there, and they quickly state they will be giving him to another owner. I only got to visit him once. Fast forward a few years, Alex is almost near death, and my older brother finds him and adopts him. I see him once, and Alex passes away. To this day, I've still not forgiven my parents for it. I wouldn't say that I'm angry, but I'm definitely still hurt and upset that he spent so many years with us and passed with a family that he was only with for a few years. I also wonder how his ear infections were treated, because when my brother got him, it appeared no one had treated them and he was almost deaf. It hurt me to wonder how upset Alex was and how much Alex missed us and me. So the question is, am I the jerk for not forgiving my parents? I don't really bring it up that often unless it's an argument where it degrades into talking about past things we've done, but I feel like maybe it is time to let go and forgive them. It's been over 10 years or so since this happened. Edit with more info. 2:05 a.m., December 13th. Everything written above was written with the information I knew at the time of writing it. I spoke to my parents about it before I went to bed last night. They said there were some financial issues and they didn't have a lot of time to move. They said they put Alex with my aunt temporarily to find a good home for Alex, and quickly did with some good friends from work. The reason they stated is it wasn't fair for Alex to have a tiny yard and not much space. My dad's dog is a small dog and could make do with a small yard. From what I understand, he was placed with a home that loved him dearly. He lived to a good age, and my brother got him back before he passed, but my parents aren't sure how. Security guard harasses me for waiting for my ride. So I work at an enterprise with a casino, hotel, and restaurants. I'm a custodian there, and I've been for about a year, and every day afterwards, I wait for any of my family members, or if no one's available to pick me up, an Uber to pick me up. I wait outside the main entrance in a specific spot for rideshare pickups. I had my uniform shirt off, but my uniform pants were still on, for obvious reasons. But I don't know if this security guard is new or whatever. But I was on my phone listening to my music, and he suddenly came up to me, waving to me. I turned my AirPods off and talked to him. Guard. Hey. Me. Hey, can I help you? Yeah. Can you take your AirPods out? Me. No thanks, I can hear you just fine. I have my music off. Guard. Okay, whatever. You mind telling me what you're doing out here? Me. I'm waiting for my ride. Why? Guard. Oh, okay, I got you. Just wondering. Any reason you waiting here instead of by the employee entrance? Me. Yeah. Uber usually has trouble finding it because GPS doesn't directly lead to the entrance, so waiting here is just easier because this spot is made for waiting for rideshare pickups. So, guard. Okay then. Well, do you have your work badge? Me. Yes, it's in my pocket. Can you put it on? Me. I don't think I have to. Yes, you do. It's policy to have it on. Me. No, it's policy to have it on when you're in the building. I'm not in the building, and I'm not even near the entrance. There's no reason for me to have my badge on. Guard. Okay, fine. I guess if you want to play that game. Can I get your name? Me. I don't think I have to tell you. Guard. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you to give me your name. What the heck? I'm not giving you anything. You have no right to demand my information. I've done nothing wrong. You're loitering outside the building, so I need your name to make a report. Me. What the heck? Loitering? I'm waiting for my ride in the rideshare pickup, so obviously I have a purpose. I've been doing this for a whole year and I've had no problems. Plenty of security officers saw me waiting here in uniform and didn't come to harass me. I'm not harassing you. I'm telling you you can't be sitting out here with no business. Me. You're not a cop. What makes you think you can do that? I may not be, but I have a right to protect the people here and the building, and you're waiting in the rideshare pickup that's for guests, not employees. Me. Man, please, I don't feel like dealing with this. I just want to go home. Guard. You're not going anywhere until you give me your information. Me. You know what? Do you have a supervisor I can speak with? Guard. Yes, I do. Me. Can you please get him out here? He called out his supervisor, and I waited for him to come out. After about 10 minutes, he came out and talked to me. Supervisor. Hey, so what can I help you with? Me. Hi. So your guard here is harassing me for waiting for my ride in the rideshare pickup that's supposedly not for employees, which I find very hard to believe, as I've been working here for a year and always waited here after work. Plenty of guards and cops saw me waiting here and didn't give me any problems for it. Then he started demanding to have my badge on, even though it's policy to have it on when you're in the building, and I have a right to have it off outside. Then he started demanding for my information to make a report, I guess. And now he's detaining me because I won't give him my personal information. Supervisor. Okay, I understand. Well, you are right. This rideshare pickup is for anyone, and you're allowed to have your badge on or off outside the building here. But you do need to have it on whenever you're inside the building. Me. Yeah, I understand, sir. But listen, I've been harassed for the past 15 minutes. I just want to order my Uber and go home. If you can please just educate him about everything here and get him to leave me alone, that'd be great. Supervisor.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep that in mind, and you're free to go or stay. Sorry for any inconvenience. Have a nice day. Me. Okay, thank you. Before you go, is there any way I can make a complaint? Supervisor. Yeah, there's a number you can contact. I can give it to you if you want, but you can also stop by our main office to make a complaint there. Would you like the number? Me. Yes, please. He gave me the number, and they finally left me alone. I'm definitely going to stop at the office and make a complaint about him for harassment. I'll make an update how that goes whenever I decide to do that. Karen drove my car without permission, so I taught her a lesson. My brother's car got messed up, so he asked me if he could borrow mine for a couple of months. I'm 27, male, working from home, so I don't really need to drive around so much. My only condition was I didn't want his girlfriend driving it at all. She's a horrible driver. I mean, she's caused multiple accidents and crashed my brother's car and hers multiple times. She finally got her license suspended after her last accident where she rear-ended another car at a red light and she didn't have insurance. She still drives sometimes, but my brother let her use his car, so that's why I told him she's not allowed to drive mine. Like 2 weeks later, I showed up at his place because I left a box of files I needed for work in my trunk, so I needed to pick them up. My brother was home, but my car wasn't. He looked like he was caught red-handed. His girlfriend came back driving my car because she was running late for an appointment. My brother swore it was only this one time, but I was told by my nephew that my brother let her use my car like 3 times already, and I was furious. I took my car back, so they're upset. He thinks it was ridiculous that I made that a condition in the first place when she hasn't gotten into any accidents in my car or damaged it at all. Then she's saying stuff about me never liking her and being too harsh on them for not having a choice but to have her drive my car because he can't if he's doing something. I know it sucks because it's freezing right now, and my brother is having to commute on the bus almost 4 hours total every day until his car is fixed, but don't want to risk it with her since he wasn't even honest about how many times she drove it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Her license is literally suspended and she's gotten into multiple accidents. It was a valid condition you put on lending the car and he didn't stick to that. It's his fault he's now dealing with the long commutes. Not the jerk. You lent your car to your brother with one condition. He violated that condition. You took your car back. Nothing wrong there. Since you knew she has her license suspended and you knew she had driven your car, if you did not take back the car, you could be held liable for any accident she was involved in, as your insurance company may have canceled your coverage for letting an unlicensed driver drive your car. Your brother and his girlfriend are not the victims, so do not let them guilt you. They are the jerks. I will bet money if the girlfriend had an accident, they would have walked away from it all with a statement like, "Your insurance will cover it, and you should have known she was driving your car." You're the jerk. What? Do you think everyone has squeaky clean driving records? Oh, here we go. Do you realize that most traffic violations are completely unjustified? You really need to check your privilege and ask yourself whose side you're on, the people or the system. Stop blaming others for your own lack of awareness. People like you are the same ones who think less of me for getting my degree in gender studies instead of business administration. Oh, she works at Starbucks now. Should have majored in accounting. I'm just so sick of people like you, and I refuse to let you push me around anymore. God, I hope you don't have kids. You'll be just like my parents, completely and utterly selfish, which is a huge part of why I'll never have any spawn myself.
Bruh, somebody get this girl some milk.
Or a friend or somebody to talk to. Sheesh. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his brother and the girlfriend? Please let us know.
I'd cut contact with the brother and his girlfriend. They sound like complete idiots.
Force us to attend a meeting on vacation? Fine. See you at midnight. Today's story comes from the world of education, where teachers are burnt out, overworked, and underpaid. Due to an influx in federal funding due to lockdown stimulus money, our district decided to put that money to good use. Did they give much-needed raises? Hire more aides? Update our 60-year-old building? No, even better. They hired several educational consultants to coach us on how to do our jobs. This alone was very insulting to most teachers, many of whom had been teaching longer than some of the consultants had been alive. Thankfully, many of the new consultants didn't really impact our day-to-day work, but there is one who is particularly difficult. I'll call her the Panther for reasons known only to me and a couple of colleagues, but it's a nickname she comes by honestly. The Panther continually adds to our workload
insults teachers with snide remarks, and talks down to the staff. At one point, it got so unbearable that the most experienced teacher in our department simply got up from a meeting, told the principal to get a sub, and drove away. One of the biggest issues has been a sharp spike in unneeded meetings as consultants work to justify their contract. We meet to discuss data, testing, plan units, or do everyone's favorite, team-building activities. However, all is finally looking up. As every teacher knows, we are nearing the most wonderful time of year, Christmas break. We will get 2 glorious weeks of not being harassed by students or administrators. Enter the Panther. We received an email at the end of last week from our consultant telling us we needed to have a meeting over Christmas break to plan Unit 4. She told us we could pick the day and time and then send her the Zoom link and she would join to lead it. Needless to say, the department was very unhappy. We had all already planned the unit anyway, but the Panther said she needed to be involved in any planning and insisted the meeting was necessary. Finally, my department had had enough. She planned the meeting as instructed and sent us all the link for the Zoom session. The meeting was planned for 11 p.m. on December 24th. We all instantly accepted the meeting time and confirmed that we could attend. For some reason, the Panther wasn't happy with the meeting time. She pushed back, griped to an assistant principal, who backed us, and tried to get us to change, but she got the same answer everywhere. You told them to schedule a meeting, so either attend or cancel. She canceled. Reply: Great malicious compliance. I taught upper elementary grades in the US for a few years, decades ago. I rolled my eyes when I realized your story was about the visiting consultants. May I share my favorite visiting consultant story from long ago? This was more than 30 years ago, so I'm fuzzy on the exact wording, but the story is true. My school district spent tax dollars to hire a consultant, Dr. Jones, to come in and lecture us for a whole day of in-service training on how we were not challenging our students enough. In very simple terms, make lessons harder. Exactly 2 weeks after that in-service day, the district spent more tax dollars to hire a different consultant, Dr. Smith, to come in and tell us we were making our lessons too difficult for our students. In very simple terms, make lessons easier. By the last session of the second in-service day, I was puzzled. In the general question and answer session at the end of the day, I stood up and asked Dr. Smith, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Jones told us our lessons are too easy and we need to make lessons more challenging. Now today, you're telling us the opposite, that our lessons are too difficult and we need to make them less challenging. Doesn't this directly contradict what Dr. Jones told us to do? Dr. Smith never was allowed to answer my question. Before Dr. Smith could reply, the director of elementary education stood up from her front row seat, whirled around, and told me in a very angry-sounding voice,
Clearly, Mr. Snappyland, you were unable to understand what you were taught last time and again today. We can't waste the whole group's time making these concepts any clearer just for you.
She turned around then and told Dr. Smith to move on to the next question. Afterward, several teachers approached me and told me that my question was a valid question, but they had been too afraid to ask it themselves lest they anger the administrators. I never heard about it again from my principal or from any other administrators.
Sounds like some schools have complete buffoons working in the administration. Maybe that explains that first "you're the jerk" commenter. Perhaps her school was the one that failed her.
Or her parents.
She make me want to say,
Nice. Am I the jerk for ruining my neighbor's kid's Christmas? Me, female 24, and my husband, male 27, had a new neighbor move in next door in June of this year. A single mother, May, with 2 boys who are 4 and 7. I don't know too much, but I know it was a bad situation, so we offered to lend a hand whenever she needed, doing the occasional babysitting and school drop-offs and pickups, grocery shopping, etc. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a 2-month-old, but recently had the baby at the beginning of December, so he had been able to help out until the end of my pregnancy. With Christmas approaching, I asked if we could buy the boys a present. Last year, she didn't have enough money, so didn't celebrate and didn't even tell her 4-year-old it was Christmas. She said yes and was excited to celebrate Christmas. We even lent her some Christmas decorations. I got the boys some Harry Potter Legos, gift wrapped it, and had my husband deliver it. Last weekend, the boys came over really excited and were thanking me for the Christmas present. I asked them how they liked it and told them why I picked it out. My nephew, who's 7, has them and liked it. But 4-year-old got confused and said their mother got them the Lego set and said that I gave them clothes. I was a little slow. I blamed the baby brain and sleep deprivation, but my husband took over and saved it, claiming we knew they'd be more excited over toys than clothes. They didn't seem to question it before leaving, and I forgot all about it. The next day, May came over, furious, and began yelling about how I ruined her kid's Christmas and had a white savior complex and wanted all the credit and attention. They're mixed. She told me I should have never assumed she'd tell them I got the gift and claimed I did it on purpose, getting such a good and expensive gift. She said I should have given her all the credit, and I tried to explain I didn't know, and once I did, we backtraced. But apparently the 7-year-old knew, and now the 4-year-old did as well. I apparently should have known and wanted to give credit to her without her asking, but me not doing so said something about my character. She was furious when we left, and we haven't spoken since, but it's been weighing on me ever since. Not the jerk. If May wanted to take credit for the gift, she should have said something to you. How the heck were you supposed to know that's what she'd do? It says a lot about her character that this is how she treats her neighbors who went out of their way to make a special Christmas for her kids. Bringing in the race is also not cool, and her trying to make you feel guilty and bad for the fact she got caught lying. I understand it feels terrible she can't afford expensive toys to gift, but you can't expect people to know you're lying when you don't loop them in. Even then, I have mixed feelings about lying about these things. Not the jerk. You did a kind thing, many kind things it sounds like, for a struggling single mother, and she turned it around on you to save face with her kids to cover her lie. I get that she's probably very embarrassed by the money situation, but gosh! She really made herself look bad instead of accepting the help with grace. She could have had a quiet word with you ahead of time about if it really meant a lot to her to have all gifts be from her, and I wouldn't have called her a jerk for requesting that because I understand how much it can hurt to not provide everything for your kids. But her response was so out of line. You didn't ruin anyone's Christmas, and it tells you what kind of person you're dealing with. I'd be kind to the kids, but decline to help the family anymore. It seems like all the help that you give her will get spit back in your face. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her neighbor? Please let us know.
No wonder baby mama's single. I don't blame baby daddy for running out on her one bit.
Come on, Karen, that's not nice.
But it's true. Never try to help someone with a super victim complex. They'll always find a way to try to turn you into the bad guy when all you were trying to do was help them.
You sound like you speak from experience, Karen.
If you only knew.
You're not allowed to help your coworkers. Okay, no problem. So I started a new job about 2 years ago and finally found a job I'm naturally good at, which has been amazing as my performance has been top-notch, no disciplinary actions, and even a few awards. So I started helping out my fellow coworkers when they were struggling, and especially helping out the newbies who just got off training, which is garbage generic training for 3 weeks, which has literally nothing to do with our sector, and we're literally told to forget everything we learned because it does not apply to us. So naturally, the newbies struggle a lot at the start, and that tanks performance for the entire team. So I wanted to be a good team player, and now that I finally felt like I knew what I was doing, apparently that was a mistake on my part. After 3 months of helping my team, I was called into a meeting with our coach to discuss my behavior, and I was told that I was not allowed to help my coworkers because I'm not trained in that field, and only the higher-ups are supposed to answer questions and make decisions within our job, which would be fine and understandable if the coach was available for the entire 8-hour shift to answer questions and help people, which they are not. I pointed this out along with some statistics that since I started helping out answering questions, our performance has gone up each month, and it helps the newbies feel welcomed as they have a non-superior they can ask stupid questions to without worrying. Another mistake on my part, our coach got really upset and angry, and I was basically told that this is how it is, and if I'm caught giving unsanctioned help again, I will receive disciplinary action. Okay, fine. Have it your way then, you sad, pathetic excuse of a human. I screenshotted the conversation, dug up performance reports prior to me helping, during me helping, and for the next 3 months without me helping. And wow, shocker, we started tanking in our performance. How could this have happened? So the entire team got called into a big meeting with the higher-ups, our manager and coach, to discuss what the heck is going on and why we're doing so bad. I let everyone speak and say their piece, and at the end of the meeting, I just asked if I could have 5 minutes of one of the big chief's time, as I think I might have a solution to help improve our performance. And he was actually surprisingly interested, so he called me up after the meeting to hear me out, and I told him about the whole situation, showed screenshots, performance results, the whole 9 yards. My dude was visibly shook, a bit lost for words to be honest, but said he really appreciated the input and would look into fixing this internally, and that was that. 3 days later, our coach resigned in search for greener pastures. Edit. I'll answer some of the most common questions asked. I did get offered the coach position, but I declined as I love my current position and the flexibility. It's not a toxic environment, it was just a bad apple. I did not get a pay raise. Reply. It's amazing how clueless management can be. I worked a field job, before mobile data was available, where we had to call into an 800 number after on-site service to log our time. The company started cutting back on the people in the call center to save money. Those attempts to save money ended up costing the company a massive amount, with 300 people in the field sitting on our thumbs for hours at a time waiting to log our service calls. One of the service directors visited our city and I asked for 5 minutes with him, just as you did. In that 5 minutes, we did a math problem. 300 people in the field times 1 hour conservatively a day on hold equals 300 hours per day wasted on hold by field personnel. Mr. Director, how many call center reps do you think that would be enough to hire? A couple? It was like someone lit a light bulb over his head. He walked away, and 3 weeks later, we heard he had started his own initiative to hire additional call center workers. It came as no surprise in the coming months when our hold times went back down to a few minutes per call. Reply. Similar thing happened to me. Every time a new person came up to me with a question, which usually coach could not answer, I would give them my full attention, listen to their question, get them to clarify what they needed, what knowledge they lacked, etc. Then inform them that I had been told not to help them, to write up the question as we had discussed it, the lack of knowledge they had, how training had not covered it, nor did documentation, then send it to the coach, the training department, the newbie's manager, the coach's manager. With the opening phrase, to improve future training and coaching, I wish to point out the following gap in my training and coaching. I have reviewed my class materials of notes, brought the question to the coach, and still do not have a solution. Note, I had usually already sent email to training and my manager letting them know the message from the newbie was coming. Training, when asked, could honestly say, we are aware of the gap and it will be addressed in the next round of training and refresher classes, and my manager so he could have my back. After the third one, the coach came to me with a, what the heck are you doing? I was told it was your job to help the newbies. You could not help them. I was also told that training was to be kept in the loop for knowledge gaps. So I told the newbies that I couldn't help, but they could help the system by reporting their gap in training and coaching. To his credit, the coach actually started being a real coach and coming to his experienced coworkers asking the questions, usually with the newbies in tow. I don't work here, lady. Best Buy edition. For my job, I work as a regional sales manager for a pretty major consumer/industrial electronics manufacturer, and I specifically work with a lot of the national retail channels, and I will do meetings with a lot of each retailer's leadership and directors in store to discuss product sales, supply chain projections, product marketing, and other various metrics. I also have in-store brand ambassadors who represent our product lineup, specifically in Best Buy locations. For starters, when I go into stores, I generally wear dress clothes or something semi-formal with an identification lanyard and a book bag, just so I specifically don't get stopped a bunch of times by customers when I'm trying to complete my job. I usually don't mind helping people out in stores when I can, but I have to be pretty concise with my schedule, and I have limited time available to be in the field. On one of my most recent visits, I was meeting with one of my brand ambassadors to complete a performance assessment. When I was walking in, a middle-aged woman grabbed my shoulder. I cannot stand being touched, so great start, and immediately started asking me about some open box television and what kind of a deal I could work for her. I kindly informed her that I was a store visitor that worked with Best Buy leadership, but I didn't represent Best Buy in any other way, and my brand doesn't sell TVs, so that wasn't my area of expertise. Her response was,
Oh well, you're here now, so I need you to tell me about it and figure out what we can do here.
And then followed it up with a pretentiously uppity,
Also, I'm a realtor, so no funny sales tricks.
which was strike two. After reluctantly dealing with her for about 15 minutes and finally getting her to make a purchasing decision, she begins to start questioning me as to why the display TVs look 10 times better in store than her TV does at home, and why that should be legal marketing practices. Being fed up at this point, I told her that they use a flash drive of specifically optimized videos and have the TVs professionally calibrated. I also used an analogy relatable to her and said, think about it like this. As a realtor, you've sold a home that's absolutely hideous, let's face it, and I'm sure when you staged that home, you put a bunch of beautiful $5,000 couches, fancy love seats, and a mahogany coffee table in there to really sell the personality of the home. In reality, you just put lipstick on an ugly pig. It's the same thing with any kind of visual product marketing. She ended up apparently trying to file a complaint with the store and district manager, and they informed her that they didn't have an employee named Sweeve 10, and they had no idea who she had talked to. Reply: lovely, especially using her own profession as a kind of reverse Uno example. Judging from her reaction, you probably hit the nail on the head. OP: I didn't tell her this, but my family has a really strong background in real estate. I've noticed that a lot of people in the profession will use that as some sort of flex, as if they're some sort of real estate mogul. I happen to know that this is an actual practice in the profession, and calling her out on that was apparently too offensive for her. I know a lot of people in the industry who are genuinely successful agents and do incredibly well financially, but none of the top agents I've ever met tell people that as a sense of entitlement or prestige, so that told me a lot about her in a matter of seconds. Entitled parent decides to mess with me in the checkout line. I finally had my Karen in the Wild experience yesterday morning. I live in the southeastern US, and we have a popular small box retailer here with a yellow sign in black letters. They are all over the rural south and in many places act as grocery and general stores to the community. I needed to stop and get an item for my vehicle before I ran morning errands, so I dropped in at our local neighborhood store, found the item and a couple of other things I wanted, and got in line. I am very conscientious about wearing a mask when I go out and steering very clear of those who don't. The line was fairly long for a Saturday morning, and I was then third or fourth customer in line. This store funnels all customers into a sort of a tunnel lined with impulse purchases, lighters, candy, magazines, small toys, that sort of thing, for checkout, and there are 3 cashier stations along the line. Only one was manned at that point. The customer in front of me was a late 30-ish woman with a daughter who looked to be about 10 or so. This was entitled mom and OK kid. The kid wasn't so bad. She had on a cute dog face mask, but entitled mom wasn't wearing one at all. She was pushing a half-full cart of items. OK kid asks for a candy bar, and entitled mom says it's okay. Kid reaches for a nearby bar of candy. Then entitled mom starts looking at the candy, scanning the rows, and her eyes find what she wants near where I am standing. Luckily, the person behind me was not only standing at least 6 feet back, but had a cart between us as well. So as the entitled mom came towards me, I started backing away. She kept coming closer, and I kept backing up, which she noticed. When I hit the cart behind me, she smiled at me and said, "Looks like you're trapped," and kept coming towards me. Well, I walk with a cane. At that point, I raised the cane so that it was between us and said, "Please stop coming towards me. You aren't wearing a mask." She stopped and laughed, then said, "Are you going to hit me with your cane, old lady?" I glared at her and said, "If you come any closer, I will. I'm feeling very threatened." She laughed again, then put her hand up to her ear and said, "What? Couldn't hear you. Say again. Your mask is making it hard to understand you." And laughing. Then her daughter started laughing too. About that time, another employee came over to open the second register, which I was standing directly in front of. Usually they say, "I can help the next customer here." But instead, she said, "I can ring you up, ma'am," to me. I put my purchases down on the counter, and she reached for the first item to scan. Entitled mom said, "Hey, wait, I was next," and started backing up toward me again, with her cart in tow. The cashier said, "Ma'am, you have already passed me. The next cashier will have to take care of you." Entitled mom didn't like this, but turned back forward to see the first cashier had already finished ringing up the customer in front of entitled mom and had turned her station light off, signaling that she was closed. Entitled mom said, "Hey, where are you going? You haven't rung me up." The first cashier said, "Sorry, I'm scheduled for my break now, and I will get written up if I don't go on time," and walked away out the door. Entitled mom is now fuming and turns back to the second cashier. Entitled mom waits for my cashier to be done with my purchase, then starts to back up again. This makes it impossible for me to leave, as we are in that tunnel, and I said, "Ma'am, you are going to have to go forward and leave the tunnel so I can get out." She stops and says, "Oh, just squish by me. You act like I have the plague or something." I looked directly at her and said, "As far as I am concerned, you do." She huffed and pushed her cart forward and out of the tunnel, and I was able to squeeze by her safely.
Behind me, I heard the cashier start ringing up the customer behind me who had a pretty full cart, and I turned and saw that the line behind me had 5 people in it now. The entitled mom yelled, "Hey, I was next!" And as I was going out the door, she turned her buggy back into the tunnel the wrong way. Then I heard the cashier say, "Ma'am, you can't come back in here the wrong way. You have to get back in line." Unintelligible barking came from the entitled mom as I went out the door. I admitted, I was grinning behind the mask. As I was getting into my vehicle, the first cashier was around the corner of the store having a smoke break. She finished her cigarette, put it in the ash post, and said, "I hate people like that. We love messing with them. Sorry she bothered you." I laughed out loud at that point and said, "Hey, this will make a good story for Reddit." She laughed too and went on in the store. No idea what entitled mom did after that, but I noticed as I passed her when I left the store that she was wearing a scrub top for a local pediatrician's office. Think I might make a phone call on Monday asking them how they feel about one of their staff terrorizing those in the community who choose to wear a mask and socially distance. P.S. Ladies, if either of you read this, thank you. I appreciate you being there for us. Following directions to adhere to company food safety procedures cost the company in excess of $25,000. Several years ago, I was working as the manager of the meat department in a large Australian supermarket chain. I had been pulled up for minor issues relating to food safety in the past, mainly relating to temperature checks and cabinet cleaning. During the discussions about these issues, I was told, as well as recorded in writing, that the food safety guidelines are a legal document and are not up for negotiation or interpretation and must be adhered to the letter. Remember that quote. Fast forward to a few days before Christmas. My store was one of the busiest in the region, so the meat case and cool rooms were packed to the absolute max with stock. Hams, roasts, turkeys, the whole works. It was the same store-wide, absolutely maxed out. Christmas in Australia is unlike most other places. It gets hot, dang hot. On this particular day, the temperature outside was pushing 45 degrees Celsius, approximately 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Aircon and fridges were all working hard to keep everything cool, when suddenly, at about 3 p.m., we have a store-wide blackout. Usually, we have a backup generator which would kick in and keep the cool rooms running. So the worst case, stock could be emptied out of the cabinets and into the rooms to keep it food safe. Well, for some reason, the generator didn't kick in and the store was completely without power and running on emergency lighting only. We evacuated the store and were contacting technicians, etc. to get things running again. I checked the food safety guidelines book, and the policy in such a situation was to monitor the temperature of stock every 15 minutes, and if it reaches over 4 degrees Celsius and stays there for more than 2 hours, all affected stock must be discarded. Being such a hot day, the temperature had already breached the 4 degrees upper limit when I did the first check, meaning the countdown was on to get things running again. I documented absolutely every step of the way, following the guidelines to the letter. At 4:45 p.m., with 15 minutes to go until the deadline, I went to the office and got a handheld scanner in preparation for what was to come, and was spotted by the store manager who asked what I was doing. I told him that I was getting it to begin dumping stock. We argued back and forth, with him saying that the stock would be fine and that a refrigerated truck was on the way to move everything into. It ended in me saying, "The guidelines are a legal document. By ordering me to go against what they say, you're instructing me to break the law, which I am respectfully refusing." At 5 p.m., I began scanning off and dumping stock from my case. I had already almost filled an entire dumpster with stock when the refrigerated truck turned up. The manager once again instructed me and the fellow department managers to take our now unsafe stock and move it into the truck. Everyone hesitated, but I flat out refused and continued dumping my stock. He eventually revoked my access to the handheld scanner in order to stop me, so I called the area manager, his boss, and explained the situation and what he had instructed. Area manager said although it was never public, there was actually some built-in wiggle room between the company policy and the legislated state code, and that although it breaches the company policy, the state food safety code hadn't yet been breached, but was furious that the store manager had instructed me to intentionally breach the company policy. I told the area manager that I had been instructed and documented to follow the food safety guidelines to the absolute letter, and that the policy was non-negotiable and not up for interpretation. He agreed that I had done the correct thing by dumping the stock, and also agreed that I was within my rights to refuse the orders of the store manager, thinking they were illegal. All in all, I dumped about $25,000 worth of stock and my team got a ton of overtime to bring the case and stock levels back up to presentable standards for Christmas. The manager got a very severe reprimand and was fired for an unrelated issue not long after. My girlfriend is demanding I buy her a six-figure car. I, 24 male, am dating a woman who's 26 and will refer to her as A. For some context, I drive a 2019 Nissan GTR. It was my dream car growing up, and I told myself when I made it and made enough to afford it financially and not have it be everything in my bank account. I work a job making close to six figures, and I've learned to invest in stocks and crypto. I've made some good money, but of course, stocks and crypto are never promised and could crumble tomorrow. My girlfriend drives a 2018 BMW M3, and it's a very nice car in good condition with no issues under the hood. The other day, she suggested I should order her a new Tesla for Christmas. The one she wanted before I put work into my car was more than my car had cost. Of course, I'm not saying I don't or won't spend money on her, but she drives a very nice car that I paid for. She pays the insurance and the maintenance and upkeep. That is still a luxury car that drives well. I argued with her that I wasn't going to drop six figures on a car when I'm looking at buying us a house. Yes, even though we're under the dating title, we have extremely strong love for each other. Crap, she has my name tatted on her. Not my idea. And while I love her and am always buying her what I think she'd like or tells me that she likes as gifts, I just really think it's financially irresponsible to buy a new car for no reason. She tried insinuating I was being cheap because I spent more money on my car than I did hers, and my car has work done on it. She tried accusing me of not loving her and only giving a hoot about myself. I genuinely don't think I'm the jerk for spending my money that I work for on whatever I'd like. Yes, she works a job that she finds ideal and went to school for and enjoys, and I'm not pocket watching her. Am I the jerk for refusing to buy her a new car? Edit. Just to clarify, when I do math, I automatically factor in taxes because I don't consider it my money. Or when I spend on something, it's not whatever the sticker price is, it's with taxes and fees included in my brain. What I should have specified is that I pull in close to six figures after taxes. My apologies for any miscommunications on my end. Edit 2. Some comments were suggesting I show her this thread. While I thought I was in the wrong, I didn't think I'd get an overwhelming amount of people pretty much in agreement with each other that her actions are like a gold digger. I don't know if it will make her more offended or be the reality check that she needs. Not the jerk, but she is. Run! She's in this for the material things she can get. You already bought her a nice car. That car ain't cheap, but she wants more? And she's keeping score. Your car is more expensive than mine. It's only going to get worse. And why doesn't she buy herself these expensive things? Not the jerk. Your girlfriend is an entitled jerk among many other things. Does she work? If she wants a car, she can buy one herself. Sounds like you are nothing but a sugar daddy to her. If all your stocks, wealth, and status crumble tomorrow, do you honestly think she'd stick around? OP. She works as a nurse. She doesn't make nearly as much as I do. I didn't think buying her a car would result in her wanting an even more expensive car so soon after the fact. You have a six-figure car, no house, and almost make six figures? She is not your only problem, man. I don't blame this chick for wanting to hitch a ride on the financial disaster train. OP, please spend your money on some financial planning. Not the jerk about the not buying a car for your girlfriend, but if you make under 100K and don't own your own home, buying a $100,000 car, or any depreciating asset for that matter, is a really dumb financial move. Find a financial planner to help you make the best choices for your future. Oh, and ditch the girlfriend. If she's that entitled already, it's not going to get any better. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
At least they're not married yet. Save yourself while there's still time.
Your job isn't helping customers. Another post knocked loose this memory from my retail days. I just started working at Fry's. For those who don't know, it was a big box electronics retailer, sort of like Micro Center, with terrible management at anything above the department manager level. I found this out firsthand shortly after finishing training. I worked in the components department. Think computer parts for builds and electronic stuff you'd find at Radio Shack, and I was a sales associate. That meant I was on the lowest rung and didn't earn a commission from sales. My department manager had explained to me that I didn't get commission.
But my primary responsibility was still helping anyone who came to the department. If you did well enough at this, you'd be moved to commission sales, where you made the big bucks. So I tried to be helpful. Plus, everyone wore the same white shirt and tie, and customers didn't know the difference between commission sales and associates. Then corporate came. The corporate components manager breezed in to tell everyone how to do their job. And in her eyes, that meant I was supposed to be putting together product schematics to the exclusion of everything else. So she condescendingly took me aside to review how to put products on a peg. In the middle of this demonstration, someone came up to ask where a product was, and I tried to help them. That didn't sit well with the corporate lady, so she stopped me in front of the customer and told me that wasn't my job, and that she would help the customer. That earned her an odd look from the customer, but whatever. So I continued doing the schematic. It wasn't exactly the rocket surgery she made it out to be. Apparently, she got distracted haranguing other people because it was an hour or so before she walked by. While I was helping another customer, again, she came up and started yelling at me that my job wasn't helping customers, and I needed to get back to work or she would write me up. I shrugged. Whatever. It was a job I took to pay bills during grad school, so it wasn't worth arguing. I would do exactly what she said though. I was putting together a product schematic right near the front entrance that day. That meant a lot of people would come through and I was the first worker they saw, so they'd come up to me and ask where to find something. Normally I'd be happy to help, but not that day. I wasn't going to get written up, no sir. So every time someone asked me to point them to something, I politely apologized and told them I couldn't help. They'd inevitably get angry when they realized I wasn't helping them. So I'd politely apologize again and tell them it was corporate policy that I wasn't allowed to help them. And oh, by the way, that policy was put in place by my corporate manager, who just so happened to be at the components podium that day if they wanted to go ask her anything or talk to her about that policy. She never did come over to apologize or tell me to do anything differently. This lady was too convinced that her way of doing things was the right way. I did have the pleasure of looking down the aisle to the podium and seeing a steady stream of irate retail customers who are always a special mix of belligerent and stupid, laying into her with complaints that got more and more irate as they realized everything I'd told them was true. I'm told she didn't end up getting much done that day because she was too proud to admit it would be better for me to take 5 seconds out of hanging products on pegs to point someone to the right part of the store. As soon as she left, we went back to helping anyone who came through, even if I was doing the extremely difficult intellectual task of hanging products on the proper peg. I wasn't at all surprised a few years later when the company started circling the drain because they couldn't pave over incompetence at the corporate level in a world where Amazon and Newegg were eating their lunch. Reply: I've dealt with those schematics under the name of planogram. Yes, a trained monkey should be able to put one together if the package sizing was put in correct in the first place. Unfortunately, the same management you worked with created the policies for the poor dead souls putting in the measurements. Gosh, the policies in the big blue box I worked in make me question if management was required to have some kind of surgery to shut down parts of the brain. Reply: When I worked in replenishment at a store that has since ceased to exist, we were told we had to keep our stockroom aisles free and clear. It was the law, actually, fire codes and all that. We asked what we should do with the excessive amounts of stock that was crowding our stockroom floors. They answered we should replenish the sales floor. After all, that was our job. Great, except there was no room on the sales floor either. Someone had overestimated how much stock we could move in between shipments. Well, nothing else for it. We broke out some older clothing racks that were scheduled to be destroyed, and we hung all of the extra stock on them out on the sales floor. It got so crowded you could hardly walk down the main aisles in the store. Of course, a crowded store deters customers, so the next month it happened again, and we still hadn't sold all of the stuff from the previous month or from 2 months ago. My manager, a good lady and very flexible, got a different job when she was told that she had to replenish the new stock. We didn't even have old racks to use this time, so she took some time off and found herself something else to do. I left not long after. To be fair, it was a good job once upon a time, but the overall store management had changed, and the good middle managers and workers were jumping ship left and right. I miss it. It was a good store. Have you ever had a boss who was a complete idiot? Please let us know. I've got a co-host who is, I'll tell you that much.
Am I the jerk for having the girl my brother got pregnant move in with me? I, 23 female, have a brother, 18 male, who I love with all my heart, but he's a little bit of a jerk to the ladies. I've tried to tell him how messed up it is to cheat on them, etc., but he doesn't listen and thinks I'm just complaining. My husband and I live alone in a 4-bedroom home we bought to fill with kids, but unfortunately, after a few losses, we accepted we won't have any biological kids. That being said, there's 2 whole rooms in our house that aren't used for anything but storage. A few weeks ago, my brother told me he broke it off with his girlfriend after she told him she was pregnant and her parents kicked her out. He told her he wasn't ready for a kid and tried to get her to get rid of it. I immediately called her to find out where she was, picked her up, and invited her to come live with me, which she has been for the last 2 weeks. She is unsure if she wants to keep the baby or give it up for adoption, so there's also talks of us adopting her baby, but that doesn't matter. She would live with us anyway. My brother flipped out at me and told me it was incredibly inappropriate for his ex-girlfriend to live with me, and that I'm just trying to use her kid to replace the one I lost, and I'm choosing her over him if she lives in my house. My parents agree it was incredibly inappropriate for her to live with me and that it wasn't any of my business on what happened to her, and I was jeopardizing my relationship with my brother by doing this. Am I the jerk? Edit. The conversation of us adopting her kid was brought up entirely by her. My husband and I never even considered it. I do not think of her as a way to have a baby. I think she is a scared girl pregnant with my niece or my nephew. If she decides to keep the baby, then I will be the most doting aunt I can be. If she decides she wants us to adopt the baby, then she will be the most doting aunt she can be. Not the jerk. Your brother may be unhappy and uncomfortable with this situation, but he's also safe, has a roof over his head, and is casually avoiding taking any responsibility for his own behavior. In the meantime, this woman has had her entire life thrown into disarray. She's not much more than a kid herself, pregnant, and was made homeless and dumped by her useless partner. You did good. You've given her a safe place to land while she figures things out, which is incredibly kind. As long as you're not coercing her into making decisions based on what's best for you and your husband, you are not the jerk. Wow, not the jerk, but your brother and parents are. They would allow the mother of their child/grandchild to be homeless? You are a good person for taking her in. It's chilling how cold the parents are being about their grandchild and her or his mother. Or rather, they haven't dealt with his BS. I'm getting strong vibes here that the parents have been letting him get away with his crappy behavior for a long time since he won't listen to Big Sis. Apparently, he has a hard time realizing that his actions have consequences, let alone that they affect other people badly as well. Not the jerk, OP. In fact, I think what you've done is amazing. I hope this young woman and her kid make for a wonderful addition to your family. I'm sorry your brother doesn't appreciate you looking out for his own unborn child, since you just made it impossible for him and your parents to forget and ignore what he's brought into this world. But hopefully, one day he matures and steps up. My brother is very similar to what OP has described her brother as. He just hasn't gotten a girl pregnant yet. But my parents let him get away with all his crap because it's apparently easier, rather than dealing with his tantrums when something doesn't go his way or if someone talks back to him. He's 23. You're the jerk. Stay out of your bro's business. If my sister pulled this crap, I wouldn't consider her my sister anymore. Your bro is literally 18 years old and having to deal with all this crap. You letting his baby mama move in with you is just majorly taunting him. He's trying to cut her off, and you're making the problem so much more difficult. Your parents are 100% right about you. You're not the saint everyone here is making you out to be. You're someone who saw an opportunity to harass your bro and adopt a baby. People always blame the dude when a chick gets knocked up. Last I checked, it takes 2 to tango. Maybe once girls stop getting with jerks, they'll stop being treated this way. But like that'll ever happen. I'm 18 and have been rejected several times, so I honestly don't even try anymore. But stories like this make me feel better though. So glad I'm not your bro.
Well, don't you sound pleasant?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother? Please let us know.
OP sounds wonderful. It's amazing she can be related to a bozo like her brother.
Am I the jerk for reporting a stalker? I joined a tabletop club at my university recently. I played a few D&D games and everything was fun and great. There was a guy, Chris, in the club as well. He mainly played Warhammer, but we played together a few times. Our school has an academic policy for clubs. He was failing one of his classes, so he didn't show up for a while. When he came back, he asked what I was doing over winter break, and I told him I was staying on campus. We don't have a spring break except for 5 days, so the winter one started on the 10th, and I've been seeing Chris everywhere. I've seen him at my dorm, my work, in common areas, in downtown, etc. He always acts really friendly and wants to hang out. I don't know him well, so I've been saying no. Yesterday, I was at a friend's apartment off campus, and he showed up in the parking lot when I left. It freaked me out, especially when he couldn't explain why he was there. So this morning, I reported everything to the school. Today, his mom came to campus and was waiting at my dorm. She told me Chris has Asperger's, and he didn't know any better, and he was going to be expelled if I didn't fix it. I'm not from a progressive area. I don't know much about disabilities. You had to drive 2 hours away to get therapy or medicine for depression in my area because none of the local doctors treated it to paint a picture. So I don't know if me not recanting is a jerk thing to do. I feel unsafe, but I don't really know what would be the right course. Addition. I just went to report what happened with Chris' mom, and one of the club presidents/leaders was there. He asked if I was okay. I said I was having some issues with someone, and he immediately asked if it was Chris. We talked after I reported the mom, and he said that Chris does not have Asperger's or any disabilities or anything. He just says he does to justify being a jerk. His words. He was failing his class because he was following around another girl while she worked during his class period. Thank you for all the judgments. They were very helpful and informative. I hopefully won't have to worry anymore. Not the jerk. Wait. He was stalking you, so you reported it. And then his mom showed up where you live instead and tried to talk you out of it? Does she not see that she's doing the same thing? Forget both of these people. His neurodivergence is not an excuse for making you feel unsafe. You're right to stand up for yourself. Not the jerk. The dude and his mom are both, and she's an enabler. Not the jerk. Don't recant. Report the mother. If she had a problem, she should have gone through the school, not to you directly. The fact that she knows where your dorm is really out of line. She's not faculty nor staff and should not be approaching students on campus at their dorms. Am I the jerk for telling my son the truth about why my wife stopped talking to her parents? Her parents always looked down on me, and I can somewhat understand why, given my past and how my wife and I met. At 23, I was a homeless man. My wife was the first person who was nice to me. Almost got kicked out of this small restaurant when I was trying to avoid the rain. She was there and pretended that we were meeting so they'd let me stay. Got a free meal, and we talked for a long time. She really helped turn my life around, stuff like helping me fill out job applications. From there, we became good friends. 2 years after that, after getting my crap together first, thanks to her, I asked her out on a date. Her family never approved of our relationship because they thought I was trash due to how my life was when we met, which again, I get it. But after 4 years of us being in a relationship, me having the same steady full-time job to help with the bills for years, they didn't even come to the wedding. Then when my son was born a year after, they still wanted nothing to do with us. So we haven't had contact in years since my son was a baby. Now he's 16 and they contacted us out of the blue. They still don't care to talk to either me or my wife, but they were willing to put their feelings aside to get to know him. We never went into details with him about why we don't talk to them, and he's never asked much before. We left the choice to him if he'd like to meet them, and he agreed to it. He's gone over to spend time on several occasions the past 3 months. Finally, the other day, he asks us why we didn't keep in contact with them. To him, they seemed like nice people, so he doesn't get what the conflict was. They told him we stopped talking over a conflict we had, but left out that they were the ones who didn't want to see us. So we told him the truth. My son already knows about my past. That's something I never wanted to hide from him. We told him they never approved of our relationship because I used to be homeless, and they never wanted to be a part of our lives since then. He got mad at them. Now they're mad at us. My son doesn't want to talk to them, and they just sent us screenshots of some of the things he told them. No insults or inappropriate language, but just what he thought of them. And they think we're the jerks because they were finally building a relationship with him, and we ruined it. For now, my son says he doesn't want to be involved with people like that. We've talked to him several times, he still hasn't changed his mind. It was my choice to tell him why, and my wife supported that. Now with how things have turned out, I wonder if I was the jerk like they seem to think I am. Not the jerk. You weren't spiteful or cruel. You didn't lie or even exaggerate. Heck, you didn't even go out of your way to stand in the way of them having a relationship with your son, despite everything your in-laws have done to you. The truth is this simple. If your in-laws had been more genuinely compassionate people at any time in all of these years, then your own son, who you've clearly raised to be a thoughtful young man, would have had more compassion towards them as well. They are living with the consequences of their own actions, as difficult as that may be for them to face, and you are not the jerk. Not the jerk. Homelessness is not a moral failing. The fact that people view homelessness that way is due to decades of messaging from the government, law enforcement, and others. It's easy to ignore homelessness when it's because of mental illness or addiction, when in fact, homelessness is because people don't have housing, and the primary reason for that is they cannot afford it. Full stop. Congrats on being able to get out of it. Please don't be ashamed ever, because you survived despite a system that is completely stacked against the unhoused. Forget those parents, and I respect your son's convictions. You did nothing wrong. You seem to have done a lot right in raising your son. Not the jerk. First, well done, my friend. Homelessness is very, very difficult to dig out of. Sounds like your wife is an amazing person, and her parents are fools to not want her or you in their lives. Thank you for being honest with your kid. Nothing tarnishes a relationship faster than dishonesty, even if it's dishonesty through omission. Your kid is old enough to make his own decisions in life, to determine the people he wants to be around, and clearly he has empathy for others. Thank you for being honest with him, and truly, you've put in a lot of work to be where you are. You should be proud. It's clear your son is proud of you, and your wife too. All three of you are better without her folks in the picture. You're the jerk for posting this fake story. She was there and pretended that we were meeting so they'd let me stay? This stuff happens in Hallmark movies, not real life. In real life, women are smart enough to keep 6 feet away from homeless Joe. This is how you wind up being found behind a dumpster. On the slight chance there is some truth to this story, you're still the jerk. I have 3 daughters, and if any of them ever started dating a homeless guy, I would disown them too, as any good parent would. We want our daughters to marry doctors or lawyers, not the guy that stands on the corner begging for change to buy alcohol with. And to everyone here complaining about how holy homeless people are and how expensive housing is, I've got an idea for you. Grow up, get a real job, and quit your complaining.
Yowza, who peed in this guy's Cheerios?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the in-laws? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for refusing to speak to my mother since Thanksgiving? So I, 23 female, haven't spoken to my mom, 45, since Thanksgiving because of her new husband, who's 37. Both me and my mother have a migraine condition that literally puts us out of commission until it's gone. I'm talking not even being able to drink water because I'll throw it up. Moving to a different position in bed is sometimes too much for me. On Thanksgiving, I was at work and had to leave early because I got a migraine and I was barely able to drive myself home. I texted my mom letting her know I probably wasn't going to make it because I had a migraine. Normally they last all day. At 11 a.m. she said, "Lay down for a couple hours and see how you feel." I went home, went to sleep, and woke up to messages from her husband screaming at me. At 2 p.m. I got a couple texts from him saying if I didn't come today for dinner, I wouldn't be welcome in their house anymore, and that my mom was a mess around the holidays, and I know why. I also got a voicemail after multiple missed calls telling me to pick up my phone, forget my headache, and get my butt down there because I owe her at least that. At 5 p.m. I got these texts. "Fine, have it your way. Starting next month, you will need your own insurance. You will be taken off the policy 12/24. Regarding me being on my mom's car insurance. I understand why the holidays are tough for my mom, especially because my grandma passed last year. I just moved into my own apartment in July, so since then I've seen her 3 or 4 times, including her birthday, which I hosted. My issue is, I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving dinner. I had to text her that morning before work and ask her if I should come over. Also, we share the same migraine condition, and I only did what she told me to do, which she should understand. I don't control how long I sleep when I have a migraine. I was planning on going over after I woke up, and I didn't wake up until 6:30, at which point reading those texts and listening to that voicemail made me not want to come at all. I called her and told her I just woke up and was upset because of what her husband said. She didn't know he had sent those messages to me, so I told her to check his phone and that I wanted an apology. The only response I got from her the next day is just repeating what her husband said about the insurance, which had never been brought up until then, and they have more than enough money for their bills. I said okay and got my own car insurance that night and let her know. She said, "Okay, I love you." And I replied with, "That's nice. I'm still waiting for an apology." Since then, she's tried to text me, and I've left her on red for each message. Today, she came to my house wanting to talk, and I refused to let her in and told her to leave. I still haven't gotten an apology from them. My friends and my uncle, Mom's brother, tell me I'm not in the wrong, but I still feel kind of bad, and I'm not sure if I'm taking putting up boundaries too far. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. The way he spoke to you is not okay. The fact your mom allowed it is also not okay. A little malicious compliance from a now retired manager. I read all the malicious compliance stories about crappy managers with great interest. I will share my story, which is from the manager perspective. I will add in the obligatory "this didn't happen today, but a few years ago." I was part of a security team for a large public building. Since the building had to be available to the public for more than 8 hours per day, we had 2 shifts. Early shift, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and late shift, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was the supervisor on the late shift. My staff consisted of me and 6 guards, including a guy I'll call Jersey. The building closed at 5 p.m., which meant no more people could come in, but the employees and public inside could finish their business and leave. At the end of the day, our job was to ensure the building was clear of people, lock all the appropriate interior doors, set the alarms, and leave at 6. Since it didn't take 7 of us to complete this, I would allow all staff except one to leave about 5:15 or 5:30. By then, 90% of the people were gone. The daily designated staff member and I could handle the closing tasks. The staff would rotate who stayed with me each day, and the system worked out well for all involved. This meant everyone was getting off work 30 to 45 minutes early every day and getting paid for a full day. One morning, about 9:30, we had a minor crisis in the building, and I needed a staff member to handle it. I knew it would take most of the day, so I didn't want one of the early shift guys to handle it, or it would incur overtime. 2 or 3 of my guys, including Jersey, were in the locker room getting ready to start their shift. I asked Jersey to grab his gear and go handle the issue. He looked at me and said, "You know, technically I ain't on the clock yet." I told him he was correct, and to never mind. I grabbed the day shift person to handle the issue, and the day progressed as normal. 5:15 rolls around, and I wander into the locker room. I see my guys all getting ready to leave, including Jersey. I asked them where they were going. They told me which employee was staying with me and that he was still at his post. I glanced around the room, then locked eyes with Jersey and said, "You know, you are technically all still on the clock. Nobody leaves before 6. It was dead silent as I walked out of the locker room. I have no idea what was said to him in the locker room, but I bet it wasn't pretty. We all stayed late that day, and no one said a word about it to me. However, the following morning, Jersey was in my office waiting for me when I arrived. He said, "Hey boss, I'm sorry about yesterday morning. I was out of line. You won't hear that from me ever again. Whatever you need, I'm here." We returned to normal operations after that, and I had no trouble getting someone to step up on occasion. As a boss, I will do whatever I can to take care of my employees, but I expect a little flexibility from them in return. Reply: I worked for a company whose motto was always giving a little extra. We would send out a 4-man crew with truck and trailer to do vendor stalls at state fairs. Destinations were all over the country, including some very scenic tourist spots. The boss never had a problem with us taking the company truck on days off to go sightsee, even if that meant putting extra hundreds of miles on the truck, even driving up a mountain. After returning from one tour, boss asked for a little help for about 15 minutes to unhitch the trailer and take a few boxes of equipment into the office for safekeeping. One guy balked, saying they were already clocked out and would be doing work for free. Boss replied about the aforementioned generosity in truck usage and that he just thought he could ask for a little extra in return. Thankfully, he didn't take away truck privileges, or this could be a malicious compliance of my own. But the guy didn't make it with the company too much longer. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.